don't have, yes, it's my mic that I did not turn on, so my fault, my bad, sorry. And, well, we need to call for public comment first, I think. So, yeah, we need roll call and then public comment.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer,
Here.
Councilmember Garavena,
Here.
Councilmember Sagerstrom, here, Councilmember Such,
Here.
and Mayor Hawkins is absent.
Thank you very much. And so we have 2 items on the closed session. Do we have any public comment?
Wow, look at
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
May a council member make public comment? Okay, well, I just have 2 top of mind items. One of which, I was sitting on my deck yesterday looking across at my neighbor's house and they were burning something. There was smoke coming up. And a neighbor from Oakside called and said, "Do you smell smoke?" And I said, "Yes, I see it right there." And I just wanted to remind people that we're in a high dangerous, high flammable, high anxiety fire situation, and that you should not be randomly burning things. So that was one. Number 2, I was walking back from the farmer's market, and there's a path, which I now find out is across a private property next to is it Sonora Creek, that goes between Stewart and Shepherd, and it's just littered, I guess it would be the word, with dog poop. And I just would like to remind people that, it's a public service and if you want a dog, you should pick up their leave behinds, because the rest of us don't enjoy the smell and walking over them. And also it's unhealthy and many other things. So could you please pick up your dog poop? Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment at this moment, I'm going to take us into closed session. Thank you very much. So reconvening into regular session for the City Council meeting of Tuesday, June 21st. And do we take a roll call again, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer,
Here.
Councilmember Garavena,
Here.
Councilmember Sagerstrom,
Here.
Councilmember Such,
Here.
and Mayor Hawkins is absent.
So, thank you. So, the public can participate in this meeting. There's a Zoom link on the agenda and the city website. And so, and any written comments can have been submitted. I don't think we've received any. So, instruction was given to staff, and now we are in regular session. So, Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Such, would you be good enough to lead us in that?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, clerk's report on the agenda posting, please.
The agenda was posted on June 16th, 2022 at 3:34 p.m.
And are all in approval of the agenda? Any substitutions or? Councilwoman Sagerstrom, I thought you raised your hand.
No, I said I approve the agenda.
Okay, that was a thumb, sorry.
That was an emoji for approving the agenda.
Got you.
I'm sorry.
I guess I'm going blind as long with deaf.
I'm just waving my hands a lot. Sorry.
So, okay. It says presentations, but we don't have any, do we?
No.
Okay, so public comment. The public may address the council on any item of public interest not otherwise on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of the city. No action may be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to the city staff or placed on a subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers are limited to a 3-minute presentation. If participating via Zoom, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature or dial *9, *6 to unmute. So City Clerk, do we have any? Yeah, I don't see any hands up for Zoom and I do not see anyone in the public. So calling Zoom participants, any request for public comment? Not seeing any, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be voted on in one motion unless a council member or member of the public has a question or wishes to discuss an item. In that case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Any changes or desires to pull in the consent calendar?
Nope, you're not gonna
Don't
read.
want to
I
look
thought
to
you were
the
gonna read
right
that.
as well. Well, I was told by our city administrator that whilst the current mayor does that, that is not required. And unless you as an ex-mayor want to recommend that strongly, I am just going to
Get you
go
in
on.
practice.
Pardon me?
Get you in practice.
Yeah. So.
Did you do public?
Do I need to get public comment on the,
Yes.
so, is there any public comment on the consent calendar?
Oh, BC Smith has her hand raised.
Oh, I can't see it on my screen here.
Oh,
Please, BZ, yes, go ahead.
maybe she
We
doesn't
need
know
to-
she raised her hand.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me okay. First of all, I'm sitting here in
Is there any
beautiful,
public comment on the consent calendar?
me? No, I was trying to get in for public comment. It took me too long to get into the
On my
meeting.
screen here. Please, BZ, yes, go ahead.
From
BZ, we
public,
are getting
just from
an echo.
regular public comment, Mark?
She doesn't know she raised her hand.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me okay. First of all, I'm sitting here in
Is there any
beautiful,
public comment on the consent calendar?
me? No, I was trying to get in for public comment. It took me too long to get into the
On my
meeting.
screen. Please, BZ, yes, go ahead.
From public, just from regular public comment, Mark?
Okay, so we'll mute her.
Okay.
Somebody can let her know. It sounds like she's either got her phone connected and computer.
Any public comment on the consent calendar?
Mark, me? No, I was trying to get in for public comment.
BZ, please nod your head if you can hear me now. No. Okay, it seems like you have two devices on and it's feeding back through your system and it's making a very long and complicated loop.
Turn it off.
So.
Yeah. She needs to turn off her speaker.
Okay,
Yes.
Why don't you just
so
call her?
Colette Such is texting you to
Seems like
suggest
you have two devices
turning
on,
off your
Right.
feeding
speaker
back through your
so
system,
that you.
Right,
And it's making a very long and complicated loop.
yes.
And
Can
we're
you hear me, Mark? You can?
Yeah.
Good.
She needs to turn off her.
I can't figure out
Okay.
where, so let me do this. I'll save my public comment for a
So,
future
Colette,
meeting.
Such is texting you to
Seems like you
suggest
have two devices on,
turning
I
off
know,
your
I know.
back through your system,
Right,
and it's making a very long and complicated loop.
yes. Can you hear me, Mark? Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Good.
She needs to turn off her.
Thank you, BZ. We look forward to hearing you next meeting then. So, okay. So, after that excitement, can we go on to approving the consent calendar?
I
So-
move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
So, all in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And no abstentions either. Thank you very much. So, moving on, now we have a public hearing from Rochelle Kellogg, I believe.
What?
It's at the bottom of the first page. Public hearing from
To waive
Rochelle.
the second reading.
Oh, yes.
I
Waive the
think that's
second
on,
reading
that's
and
in the
adopt the
consent
ordinance
calendar, isn't it?
No.
number 884, amending the
Oh,
zoning
public
map
hearing.
of the
Oh.
city of Sonora. Rochelle Kellogg, Community Development Director, or Directors.
I apologize. When I went to upload this, it should have gone on the consent calendar because it is the second reading, but there will not need to be a public hearing. We did it at the prior meeting. So we kind of over-noticed it, but that's better than under-noticing it, right? So this is the second reading for the ordinance that will adopt the rezoning that we talked about at the last meeting. It's associated with the parcel map. We did pick up some additional parcels so that we could do some cleanup at the same time. So staff is asking that you waive the second reading and go ahead and adopt the ordinance. And it will rezone those properties from R1 to R2 to bring them consistent with the general plan.
So, any questions from the council? We kind of dealt with this once already, but nope. So, any public comment? Once again, seeing none, would go on and call for the question.
We'll get a motion first.
Well,
Move to waive the second reading and adopt ordinance number 884, amending the zoning map for the city of Sonora.
I'll second.
thank you. All in favor? Well, aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, any opposed? Not seeing any. It passes unanimously. So, new business. Approve the fiscal year 22-23 proposed operating and capital improvement budgets as presented. And we're going to get this from Mr. Gorski, or do I read all three of them?
A, B, and C, right?
A, B, and C. Okay. So that was A. B, approve the supplemental budget requests. And C, authorize the contract extension between the city of Sonora and Visit Tuolumne County. Mr. Gorski.
Okay, so this is the proposed operating and capital improvement budget for fiscal year 22-23. We do have a PowerPoint presentation, and we are sharing our screen. So this budget has been developed and reviewed by the administrative team, which includes the department heads of the city of Sonora, the finance director, which is myself, and the city administrator. We do prioritize all funding of the budget based on the city council's strategic goals and priorities that was developed last year. And the fiscal year 22-23 budget includes the second installment of the American Rescue Plan, which is the state and local fiscal recovery funds that we receive. We received the first tranche in July of 21. Received the second tranche in July of 22. So as you can see on this line, we received $581,786 for 2 years. That is a total of $1.163 million. And just a note, without the American Rescue Plan funding, we would have been had a negative budget in fiscal 21-22, which is the year ending June 30th. And we would have been in the red for the next fiscal as well. Each department was asked to provide us with a status quo budget. There's basically the same FTEs for each budget. And the only increases were CalPERS increases that are beyond the city control. And then several expenditures that were inflation affected, including fuel and insurances. And then there was negotiated bargaining unit increases that came from the MOU agreements that we had last year. We are ending the year reasonably positive for June 30th, 2022. So that's fiscal year 21-22. We're going to land basically a positive $260,000. And that brings our general fund balance to just over $3 million. That 260 is basically unspent American Rescue Plan monies. So this page is the revenues for the city's general fund. You can see at the very right is the percentage of the revenues of the total. So for sales tax, we're anticipating 3.397 million, which is just under 36% of the general fund's revenues. Property tax at 894, which is consistent with what we received in 21-22, and that's 9.4% of the funding. And then the property tax, which is VLF backfill at 475, which is 5% of our funding. And then going down to TOT, we're at 490 as budget. We're still not back to pre-COVID TOT levels, even though now we have 12% TOT rate versus 10%. And then you can see in intergovernmental, there's a 581,786, which is the ARPA money. And so we have total revenues for the general fund of just short of 7 million, at 6.987 million. And then transfers in, which are primarily from our Measure I fund, which is the half-cent sales tax for police, fire, and public works of 2.5 million. So total general fund revenues with transfers at 9.493 million. Some comments on revenues. As we've developed this budget, it's been basically a 3-month process. The forecast that we've gotten back from the state and from our sales tax consultants have slowly declined. About 10 weeks ago or so, the forecasts were certainly better than they are now. And I'm assuming now that they'll probably decline again as we go forward. And that's primarily because the interest rate increases that we've seen and fear of a recession is growing. Transient use revenues are still not pre-pandemic, even though we now have a 12% rate versus 10% prior to COVID. We've generally had revenues right around $525,000 a year, and we're still not back to the 500,000. One of the comments that we've made while we create this budget, we have not had a fee update in some time. And as we look for revenue enhancements or anything we can do to try to balance these budgets, we see that the fees that we're charging for services generally should equal what it costs the city to provide those services. And so those fees no longer do that. And so there is a fee gap. And then note when a fee does not fully cover the cost for the service, then another revenue source must subsidize that cost. And generally that does come from the general fund. We had a second dispensary open late in fiscal 21-22. And so for fiscal 22-23, we will have 2 dispensaries operating for the full year. And so cannabis revenues are one of the bright spots for the city. And there is potential for a third cannabis dispensary, and potentially the RFP will be issued in 22-23. And then just a note too, the state has been discussing some changes to way local governments can control cannabis revenues. They want it to be much easier and they want the tax rates to be much less. And so there may be some threat from state changes to those type of revenues. So the next chart is the expenditures for the general fund. And you can see that 76.4% of the total expenditure for the general fund is basically salaries and benefits. Salaries and benefits are just under 7 million for fiscal 22-23. Operating expenditures are up, and it's basically inflationary increases. Police, fire, and public works are all spending much more on fuel. And power energy costs are up as well. And then we've had increases in basically every insurance that we have. The budget for next year, it does not include any capital projects. And so total expenditures for the general fund are at $9,088,000. Yep, let me go back. And then the transfer out is just the self-insured dental that the city has. So we spend $37,000 approximately each year for employee dental. And then some notes on expenditures. And it's been for some time now that salaries and benefit expenditures are growing faster than the city's revenue is growing. The salaries and benefits account for 76.4% of total general fund expenditures. And this is basically, these increases are on top of asking every department to be status quo. And there's no more revenues to grow staffing, anything additional. And we know that, and I'm sure the county is the same way, that almost every position we have is being paid under market rates. Again, we've asked status quo expenditure budgets for city departments, and they're only the minimums to continue operations. And then some of our challenges are Opera Hall, cemetery, and other city events. Basically, all now cost more than the revenue they generate. And so what happens is then the general fund has to contribute to each of those to have them continue. And so it's always a draw on the general fund. And as I said earlier, energy costs, fuel, electricity, insurances, liability, workers' comp have grown dramatically over the past year. Post-COVID, almost every insurance has gone up, and it's significant. We've seen for liability and workers' comp an 18% increase over the year. And this chart shows general fund expenditures by departments, and then it compares year to year. On the very right column is the fiscal 22-23 requested budget. And at the very top, city council is down a little bit at 218,200. And that represents some decrease in attorney's fees. The prior, during COVID, basically, attorney fees were much higher, and so there's been some savings in that. Going down, you can see that they're mainly status quo. Building and planning is up a little bit. There is a ADA compliance report that has to be redone every 5 years, I believe it is, and so that's been budgeted. And then we do have a contracted building inspector and planners as well. Engineering is up slightly. Administration includes a new contract for a new city administrator. Otherwise, those are unchanged. Administrative services is to $660,000, and that now includes a class and comp study for fiscal 22-23 that'll allow us to see where we are paying our staff and how competitive we are. And it's important for us to be competitive to attract not only existing employees, but future employees as well. Going down, general services is down a little bit. That was in fiscal 21-22, we bought the fountain lot, which was a parking lot. And in 22-23, there is basically is just the bare minimum expenditures. Police department is down about 100,000. In fiscal 21-22, there is a vehicle purchase budgeted, and in fiscal 22-23, there is not a vehicle, and that will be part of our supplemental request at the end of this presentation. Fire is up just a little bit, and one of the big changes in fire is we've taken several part-time engineering jobs and created one additional full-time position. So now they have what they call 3-0 staffing. So 2-0 staffing for 3 shifts. Sorry. Yeah. And then Public Works is down a little bit. Again, the fiscal 21-22, there was a new dump truck purchased, and then fiscal 22-23, there is no capital projects. Oops, hit the button. And then everything else is basically status quo for total general fund expenditures of 9.125 million. And the little chart would usually showed not just Public Works. I'm not sure what happened to it, but it's between police, fire, and Public Works, it is 76% of the total general fund budget. And now we'll have our Community Development Director up, Rochelle Kellogg, to present for her department.
They're having to be the first one. I was hoping to get these guys back there, so I knew what I should or shouldn't do up here, so. Is it not on? Okay. You're welcome. So we're gonna kind of go through real quick. I'm gonna push the button that Chris showed me to push.
Good job.
There, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
there, so.
I do that all day.
It's like, okay, do something, please. So I really, probably am not gonna go into detail unless you guys have questions, but as Chris said, we did have a planner's position that was budgeted last year, and we were not able to hire somebody to fill that planner's position. So we did do a contract planner. Contract planner's here 2 days a week. Instead of staffing a full-time position, we did bring on a planner, and that's Derek, and he is here 2 days a week. And then we have our inspector, he's here 4 mornings a week. And they're both part-time, and they're both under contract. We also have included the 504 plan for the city. Actually, the last one that was done was when Greg Applegate was here. Caltrans has requested that get taken care of, so we will get on that and get that done for the city. So I'm gonna move on because this is the stuff so our department, back in the day, there was myself and Ed. Basically, I was in with them in community development, working with redevelopment, and there was a full-time inspector, full-time special programs coordinator, and full-time community development assistant or specialist, as they are now. That has been diluted to me and Kim as 2 full-time employees, and everybody else upstairs that you see are not employees of the city, they're contracted. We oversee a lot of different things. And so we've included in that the list of all the different things that we do. We are responsible, of course, for all building and planning activities of the city. We all do process there's special permits that are handled through us. I am the secretary of the Planning Commission, so we handle all the Planning Commission functions and schedule meetings and do everything related to the Planning Commission. We also do the Parks Recreation Beautification Committee. We kind of took that over when Tim was here because most of the things that go before that committee come out of a project. So we also oversee that. We oversee all the zoning ordinances, the general plan updates, those all fall to our department. Housing programs and projects, those as well. There's several grant programs that we handle, and that includes some of the Caltrans stuff that we've absorbed over the last few years. We do all the mandated state and grant reporting. We oversee the trail. I did all the grants for the trail and continue to get funding for that. And then I do all the public works contracted projects. So I do the bidding. I work with Jerry on that, but then we do all in the back. I was doing checking certified payrolls and stuff like that. So we do all of those types of functions. And then We oversee the farmer's market. We do all the paperwork behind the scenes on that. The Opera Hall, which was non-existent during COVID, we're finally starting to see it start picking up on rentals again. And then we do some of the city-sponsored events, all fall to our department. We did, beyond just, our normal day-to-day operations at the department, we were able to get the fountain lot purchase completed from Union Oil. I have to say that was one of my original projects is under redevelopment. When I worked under redevelopment and we saw the dirt coming out onto the street down there. I don't know if you guys remember what it used to look like. And so it was just an idea that maybe we could put a parking lot there. And from that came the fountain lot. And the lady that I worked on back then called me and said they're ready to sell. If the city's interested in her, and I got to work together to finalize that. So we got to see it from beginning to end, and that was a nice thing to see happen. A lot of other people were involved in that, but we were able to get it all finalized, and now the city has that parking lot. Working with Chris, we got the generator project completed. So that brought the new generator here to City Hall, but there's a lot of electrical upgrades that came with that we had to get done. We have the new generator and transfer switch at the police department, a new portable generator and a new transfer switch out at Public Works. And then we have did the repairs to the fire department's existing generator. We did an evaluation of all the city-owned traffic signals. With all the power outages, we've had a lot of problems. You guys, I'm sure, have gotten a lot of complaints about lights going to flashing red a lot, and or just going all the way out. We entered into a new contract with Bear Electric. We went out with the county for services, and we were able to obtain a new contractor. We've been very happy with them. That we have been doing our signals with, and they do all the maintenance for us, and they also were the ones that did all the controls and the battery backups for us. So we're waiting on one more controller to come in, and it's not their fault. It's just the ways of the times. They've been waiting for months for the materials to come in. So, or the equipment to come in, but then we will have everything in good shape. So it seems to be working a lot better. And I know that Mike is very happy with our new contractor. And I do believe our costs are the costs that I see in the last few years are much better with our new contractor. We finalized the engineering phase for the Red Church project, and that project will be doing our final walkthrough this week. And then we'll be closing that project out. So we'll have completed it. Then I'll do the grant closeout with Caltrans and submit our final project documents, and then we'll have that project behind us. We have drafted the ADU ordinance. That's going to go to the Planning Commission in July. The new sign ordinance, we received Nubia's comments back. We're going to finalize that, and then it'll also go to the Planning Commission either in July or August. And then we have a new public right-of-way ordinance that has been drafted that, honest to God, I haven't even had a chance to look at, but this is what's going to replace some of our encroachment stuff. And then they'll be moving forward, either some go directly to you guys and some go to the Planning Commission first. We finalized the engineering phase. We went out to bid on the transit project. You guys know where we are on that, getting more money so we can move forward on that. And the Stewart Street restroom is under construction. The sidewalks are done. Pretty much on that one, they're waiting for the fixtures to come from the bathroom. For the bathroom, we've been waiting for a while because they have to be, we get the prison quality ones, and so we're waiting on that. It's been a long lead time on that. And then we finished our VMT thresholds and got that all adopted, which was one of our accomplishments for the year. If I'm talking too long, Chris, I'm so sorry. They should have gone first because I don't know how long you guys wanted us to talk.
We have
did.
hours.
Sorry.
Rochelle, you're doing perfect.
Yes.
Okay, good, thanks.
Well, that's my term ends in about 2 weeks, so you've got.
I got it.
all
I can just keep going, right? My goal is I want to get Jerry on getting that Leinenberg Street repair project. We want to get that done. We want to get our Woods Creek Park project. We have our per capita money, and it is included in our budget for this year to get this done. We want to get the construction underway for the transit project and close out that and complete all of our zoning updates and cleanup that we need to do, including some of the general plan stuff to make sure that we're in compliance. And then make sure that all of our zoning is compatible between our general plan and our city zoning ordinance. Finalize our CDBG grant and award for our Sonora Fire Department for our PI money that we're spending. We want to issue the RFP to get our architectural design and engineering done for the Stewart Street Shelter project and get an engineer's estimate so we can secure the construction funding. We want to get the Snell Street project going as well, and then issue our RFP to hire a firm for the 504 plan, issue the RFP for on-call engineering services. Going forward, staff's going to need help with skilled people that can run some of the Caltrans projects and stuff, and we need to get that secured, get that on board. And then also for CDBG and other related funding, because I'm going to get out of here and you guys, they're going to need help. So challenges and opportunities. What I want to do when I have one full year left with the city and then another 6 months of wrap up before I get out of here. I want to leave it better than I found it. So that's my goal. And that's, I don't mean to tear up, but that's where I want to be. So when I walk out of here, I want to be proud that I left it better than I found it. So there you go. Staffing's going to be your challenge. I don't know. The city's got a lot of financial issues. We see that, we hear it, and hopefully you can bring somebody on board that can do a lot of different things and keep everything moving forward. But it's going to take money, and it's going to take somebody that's dedicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rochelle, and we appreciate enormously how much you have done here.
Now I gotta do Public Works. Let me dry the tears. Oh, you got, I thought I was at the end. How did you do that? I was gonna go sit down.
Please, I had actually, yes.
Rochelle, I
Rochelle?
actually have a
Just a
question.
second.
Oh, no. I hope I have an answer.
I think you probably can, and if you can't, just maybe
Okay.
next week or something. First of all, I just want to tell you, if you walk out tonight, you're going to leave it better than you
You're
found
gonna
it.
be,
Thanks.
you're gonna be.
Thank
So
you.
no worries.
Yeah.
I mean, tears are sweet. I mean, you can still have tears, but Opera Hall, how many, like when in fiscal year 1920, it says that the rental income was 30,520. How, is that like, how many, is that like, how many rentals is that? I mean,
So
is there
when-
revenue that's not from rentals? Is
No,
that-
all the
okay.
revenue that comes into that is from rentals. There's no additional revenue that comes in except for if like somebody damages something and then we have to replace it, that'll switch over, but that doesn't happen very often. And then there's a piano rental fee, but that's not, the piano's not used that much. It is from rentals. When it's booming, before everything really went bad, it was pretty much booked every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
All year long?
All year long. It's rare to have a weekend. You might hit August where it's a little late July, August. If it's really, really hot, sometimes we won't have as many. But as a general thing, it's pretty much rented on the weekends. And December even, very busy with office parties and all of that. A lot of people use it for
During
that.
the week?
The biggest problem with the Opera Hall, and it's something you guys are going to have to look at, is if you want to keep it, you're going to need to raise the fees and you need to make them market. I mean, our fees are so much lower.
Yeah, they're
And we're
crazy.
getting a lot of weddings from the valley, especially because they can come up here and rent that facility for next to nothing compared to our facility, you know, in the valley and stuff. So the way that we've always been considered was they wanted to keep it a fair rate, so it was fair for everybody. But it is not covering the cost. It's never it hasn't since I've been here. It's never covered the cost to keep that facility operating and with staffing. So that's something the council's gonna have to look at is, do you want to keep it reasonable so that more people can use it, or do you want to raise the rates to a more, to really reflect the cost, or do you want to do something different altogether?
Is it legal to have a two-tiered rental, like Tuolumne County residents
was
pay
my
one,
question.
rate?
Yeah, I'm
and-
not an attorney, but, that would be really nice. But yeah, so that, our local people get first shot at it and they get a better rate. That would be a Doug question, but that's something you might want to look at is, a split rate for local residents versus out-of-towners. I will tell you, the other issue with out-of-towners is they don't really care about the facility as much. So when we have had problems, it's usually not a local. It's usually somebody that they come in, they're gone, they don't care. And then we're having to
Party,
fight with them.
party, goodbye.
So, and
Yeah.
does the cleaning fee or the cleaning deposit cover the cost of having someone come in and clean it?
So the $300 deposit is refundable as long as
Right.
they clean it. So, they have to hire somebody, or it's just a damage and cleaning deposit. And then if we have to clean it, we take the money out of that. Or if they damage something, we take it out of that and then they get the remaining back. And if there's more, then we'll bill them for the difference.
But does it cost $300 to have it cleaned? I mean, it's not awful, but it's not an easy job to clean
Yeah,
that
so
place after
if,
you're.
most people can get
use
it
it.
done for about 300, but even if they hire somebody, they still have to pay our deposit.
Yeah,
Yeah, they always have to pay the $300 deposits because it's kind of our security blanket in case something goes wrong. And then it's refundable if everything's good. But it is
That's
very, very cheap.
That's a fee I'm willing to.
and well, it's
In
a
today's
lovely
mar-
space.
Yeah.
I mean,
Especially the deposit.
I think $250 is
$1,000
actually cheap
deposit,
even for
$300
Tuolumne County.
rental.
It's
I mean,
really
like
considering how.
$350, it's not,
Yeah.
for a wedding. I mean,
Well,
and
and
you-
it's a historic building.
Yeah.
So
And it's a
that,
lovely
the
space.
Yeah.
just to preserve its integrity
Yeah.
is
And when we
important.
did lose our staff person, what we do is we hire the same lady that cleans here, and she cleans every other Monday. So that way it stays clean and then it's just our part. She'll go through and do a good thorough cleaning so that then it stays nice while the renters are there. So, Sheila used to do that on every Monday. She would go down. We do it every other Monday. It's worked fine. Kim does a good job. Not my Kim, but the Kim that cleans here.
it cleans it.
So have rentals been picking up now that we're kind of post-COVID, and
Yeah,
are they
April
looking
was-
more normal?
Yeah, April was a good month. It's starting to pick back up. Yeah.
Okay, that's good news.
Yeah,
because
it is. It was tough because we had to cancel a lot of people. A lot of people got their money back. So, and that was the policy, was that if it was COVID related, they got their money back. So, or we moved them
Yep.
to a future date.
Yep.
But they bumped themselves so many times down that it was difficult. They ran out of, okay,
Yeah.
I give up.
I
we're
want to get
canceling.
married anyway.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen, right?
Thank you.
Okay. So, do you want me to move on to Public Works?
Please.
And Jim's right, we might be here for 2 weeks now. I'm kidding. This won't take that long. I'll push the button. Okay, Chris. Okay. Public Works is pretty much status quo. There really isn't a lot to talk about. We pretty much have kept everything status, except for the stuff that Chris talked about related to staffing costs. The Public Works Department, we have a Public Works Supervisor, that's Mike. And then we have 3 Public Works Specialists, 1 Public Works Assistant, and 1 Public Works Assistant that just quit. So we have 1 vacancy that right now we are recruiting for. And then I will say that in 2008, like most departments, everybody kind of took a hit. They lost 3 full-time staff positions, and they used to have a summer seasonal position that they haven't had since then either. The Public Works is responsible for the street and sidewalk maintenance. They don't do overlay and paving, just to let you know, but they do a lot of potholing and then sidewalk repair. They do facility maintenance and repair. They do park and landscape installation, maintenance and irrigation, all the parking lot striping, signage and maintenance, everything related to the storm drains. They do striping, a lot of striping and street markings and the street signs. They've done a lot of vegetation removal over the past few years. They did a major removal up on Jackson Street. And then if the fire department has a problem getting through, or if the waste management, then they go out and they do the clearing of the city trees to make sure they can get through certain areas. They do the pile pickup programs, and they're also responsible for maintenance of the city cemeteries. And there's 2 in the city that are city-owned. They do the street light maintenance, and they work with the Bear Electric on our traffic signal maintenance and repair. They do all the garbage removal from city facilities and along the right-of-ways. They are responsible for the restroom cleaning and repairs, street signs again, and then removal of any hazards within the property, our city's right-of-way on city property. And they spend a lot of time working with PD and fire and other departments when there's special events, coordinating road closures. They're the ones that go around and put up all the no parking signs and take all that down. A lot of the guys are doing the street closure locations during events. Accomplishments for the year, they're working on street sign replacement. They've done a lot of them, and they're finishing that up this next year. Again, the removal of the vegetations, a lot of the trees of heavens, they've been doing a lot of clearing of those. We had a lot of trees go down last year, and they are very expensive, huh, Chris? So when we've had to have somebody come in, they'll come in and they'll take them down, because sometimes it's not something Public Works can do, and then Public Works will do all the debris removal and get everything out and cleaned up. And then they do weed abatement, and then potholing. They worked on the Gabion Wall last year and added another section down on Alpine at the Dragoon Gulch. They did the clearing at Woods Creek and Sonora Creek. That is going to be an issue this next year, because we're having a lot of trouble getting CAL FIRE crews. So that's an issue we're going to have to figure out. What we can't, and there is no more baseline, so it has really affected that. And then they did a bunch of work for True down at the fire department or police department last year. And then they did a bunch of sunken plots. We have a lot of plots and headstones that have sunk. And then they have a lot of time out there doing that. And then they met with us. Mike was very involved with the Stewart Street bathroom project on coming up with an idea of what we can do to stop the water from getting into that building. Goals for this next year are they're doing a lot. You guys will see a lot of new stops and new stop bars at all the stop signs. And they're working on all of that. Again, more work at Mountain Shadow. Mountain Shadow takes a lot of time just to get that plug in there. And unfortunately, the revenue only comes in when the plots are bought. So that was not good planning way back in the day. And then they're working on street sign replacement and installation. And again, vegetation removal. And I know they just did Washington Street. They're going down, and Mike's noting any pedestrian issues along the sidewalks so that they can come back and remove trip hazards. Potholing and street repairs, curb repairs. In the Turzik parking lot, one of the projects that haven't been included is to replace all the LED light fixtures and clean all the walls within the parking structure. Mike wants to get that historic fountain going at Fountain Parking Lot. That was one of his goals in here. And replace parking lot signage is needed. Some of our parking lot signage is in really bad shape.
Do they have water down there at the Fountain parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
Unlike water up here? Okay.
Yeah, there's water there. Major issue with Public Works, again, staffing, as with a lot of the departments. And so with limited staffing, you have limited things that can be completed at a time. And then facility maintenance, for many, many years, a lot of facility stuff has been kicked down the road. And some of that's coming back to bite us, as we all know. And so everybody's doing as much as they can, but there's some major repairs for some of the facilities that need to be addressed. And I know that everybody's aware of that. And then the other thing that's a big deal for Public Works is their equipment. The street sweeper is in really bad condition and it needs to be replaced. But they're very, very, very expensive. So we've been looking for options for that and seeing if we can come up with a good plan to get that street sweeper replaced. Chris did a great job finding a dump truck, so maybe he'll be driving down the road someday and go, oh, there's a street sweeper for sale. And their backhoe too is another thing that they need to get repaired down the road. And now it's the fire department, so now I really do get to sit down unless you guys have any questions.
Yeah, I
Actually, I do.
Yeah, I have a couple questions too, but go first.
Oh, I just going to ask how old the street sweeper is.
We bought it with redevelopment money, and what is it, Chris? 10 years?
Oh, it's one of the diesel ones yeah, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have a DEF
And
filter.
the same thing with the backhoe then?
Same thing with backhoe and then the bucket truck as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
oh yeah, the
geez.
bucket truck is the other one. And it's all tied to the number of hours that it's operated.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I have just niggling little things that I don't understand, which is, a lot of stuff. But it says that that you maintain the Visitors Bureau here on the Facilities Department, the Senior Center, the Education Center, the Public Works Yard, the Opera Hall, the Visitors Bureau. Is that the one down at the stoplight? You have to maintain that?
they're talking about the old Visitors Bureau building, which is the one on Stockton Street.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, oh.
that's a city-owned, that's the
Oh,
old.
that's a
the
city-owned
old
building.
Yeah,
Okay,
the old
all right.
police department, that was the old police department,
Yeah,
that building.
okay,
The
all right.
city still owns that.
Okay, I see.
We sold the houses,
Yeah.
but we still own that.
Yeah, and then I had to admit I was not familiar with a lot of the parks, so I did look them up. And what do we do on Old Wards Ferry Road? What park is that?
So on Old Wars, it's not a park.
Is it the
It's that
median?
landscape median.
Okay.
It's, they're on the railroad tracks. It was part of when they did the street and the Lowe's project. It was a natural area and it's a natural drainage area. So they did a huge muck out of there. We were having issues there then, so they went in and cleaned that out really well. So to avoid the issues we were having.
So, and then I guess I was curious about Sunrise Hills. We have a contract with them because they aren't in the city, are they?
Sunrise Hills?
Yeah, or am I thinking Sonora Hills? I'm thinking
Sun-
Sonora Hills, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
which
it's their lighting and landscape district.
Hmm.
Yeah. We're about done with that, aren't we?
Oh, by the DMV, oh, okay,
Yes.
all right.
Dick Child's property.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's for
Yeah,
limited. It's that
yeah.
Mello-Roos that we had.
Okay, well, thank
And-
you. I mean, I was like,
The lighting issue actually begs the question, with the LED lights, are we having lower maintenance costs with them?
Yes, they do. In fact, Chris and I met with a company that we thought it was free money, but then we figured out later it's probably not going to be free money. But it is a way to switch all of the city maintained streetlights to LED. Jump in, Chris, if you haven't.
Well,
Yeah, they provide the service to replace all the streetlights, and it sounded like it would be free, and then they provide us with a loan document that we had to sign, and it wasn't free. So.
probably a very big loan document.
You know, the word loan kind of was like, well, that's not exactly
It
what we're
doesn't sound
talking
good to me.
about.
yeah.
We were talking more of a grant, but
Okay,
thank
it's
you very much.
After having replaced all of our lights in downtown and all that, I was just thinking that as far as changing them out and
Yeah.
maintenance, that it should actually be lower because they got, at least I would think they have a longer lifespan. I don't know what the other ones did, but
So there's two different streetlights in the city too. There's PG&E maintained streetlights and city
Okay.
maintained streetlights. I think PG&E probably has pretty much flipped all theirs to LED, but
okay. Those
we
were the
have-
new ones that came in under
Yeah,
Kim.
There's
that
some
we
on
have-
South Washington that are
Yeah.
still the sodium lights, right?
Okay.
huh?
The ones on South Washington are a sodium light still.
Yeah,
Outlet.
and they're supposed to be working on that project.
Yeah.
Okay.
They,
PG&E.
Are they?
So
Yeah.
that's not saving us any money then. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So Chief New.
That one there.
Okay, thanks. I wouldn't know what button to push. So first off, I just wanted to say thank you to Chris. He put a lot of time and effort into the budget this year and put up with us with our schedules, trying to work around getting our budget to him. So I just want to say thank you for all your hard work. It looks really good. So with the fire department, I think I have to press twice on this one. Don't I? Yeah, it magically appears. So with the fire department, when I first started here, actually in 2015, this only goes back to fiscal year 1920. The charges for services coming to the fire department were around $7,000. The fire department was completing inspections, but was not recouping the cost for the services that they were providing. So thanks to the council and approval with the fee service, we were able to develop the cost and recovery for the business inspections that the fire department was actually completing. All that too without a full-time inspector, which was, as Rochelle pointed out, in 2008 was lost through the fire department. So we've increased revenues coming into the general fund, not by a lot, but at least helping to recoup the cost of our services that we're providing as well for those inspections. Grant revenue, we basically put a little number in there of $1,000. Obviously, you know, over the years, we've been able to obtain quite a few more dollars in grant funding. But it's a placeholder for us because a lot of them we've applied for, we haven't received the monies yet or have been awarded them. So transfers in is for our Measure I, the 500,000. That's transfer in. I'm assuming correct, Chris? Yes, I want to be correct on that. Again, the biggest costs are going to be personnel, salaries and benefits. This year we were able to, as Chris pointed out, we had up to 6 part-time engineers that were filling our 3rd engineer spot. And this year, the cost differential was finally getting to the point where by paying overtime and part-time engineers, we were only about a $10,000 or $15,000 difference. And so really happy and proud to say that this year we opened up the recruiting for the fire engineer, hopefully be testing the first week of July and secure that 3rd position so that we will have 2 full-time staff, a captain and an engineer on duty every single day protecting the city. So that's great. Definitely a great accomplishment. And I really appreciate Chris's help on that. So with finding finances and making sure and looking at all the numbers to make sure that we're filling that gap and it's not a $50,000 difference. So thank you for that. So our mission statement, we changed this over the last couple of years. The last mission statement the fire department had was the longest run-on sentence I've ever seen in my entire life. It was probably about 15 sentences. And so I got together with the firefighters, the association, and all of our staff, and we came up with our mission. And our mission is to protect the quality of life for present and future generations through interaction with our community, compassionate service, and an atmosphere that encourages innovation and professionalism. And that was something that we all could stand behind. That was something that we could all support. And I believe that moving through the next several years, you're definitely going to see that come to fruition as our mission, as we have new programs, new developments and new partnerships with people in our community. So our organizational structure is 1 fire chief, a part-time office assistant. You have 3 shifts or platoons, they call them in the fire department. So there's A, B, and C. On each shift now, we will have a full-time captain and a full-time engineer. So that vacant engineer position on C shift will now become full-time moving into 2022-23 budget. And then we supplement with our internship program with Columbia College and volunteers. Unfortunately, our volunteers are shrinking and we don't always have a full staff of interns. Right now today, we only have the 2 full-time staff. There are no interns on. So recruiting is becoming more difficult even in the intern position. We only have 2 interns in our department and we have 6 openings. So one's in background and another one hopefully going to be coming soon. So that's always a revolving door on bringing new people in and continuing their training. So I got lots of pictures. So fire department is supported again by one part-time administrative assistant. We carry out 24/7, 365 days of providing service to the city and the surrounding areas in the community. The full-time staff is supplemented, as I said, with part-time engineers, intern and volunteer staffs, and we're responsible for developing, coordinating, and implementing all the department programs and services. So just going over the pictures real quick, the grant that we received from the Office of Traffic and Safety on the far left is going to be the operational combi tool that we received as part of that grant. So this is our extrication equipment. What we had before was a 75-pound jaws of life and hydraulic lines and a generator that had to be started up, pulled out to the scene, had a delay in actually opening car doors and getting entrapped people out of the vehicle. This is handheld, battery operated, quick deployment, and is a lot faster to get people out of the cars that are entrapped into medical care. Our second one was our first fire call that our brand new engine that we received on the AFG grant and general fund monies responded to out in the county. This was a vehicle fire that had spread into the wildlands. So someone was able to capture a picture of that and send it in. And then the last picture was a wildland incident that the engine crew responded to in the county. So we have quite the diverse calls that we go to. Programs and services, we are definitely all risk, all emergency response. Last year in 2021, we responded to 1,945 calls. Automatic aid areas response was 712, approximately 37% of our calls. So I divided it up in 4 areas so that you could see north, east, south, and west. So the northern area of the county and Columbia was about 186 calls. East towards Standard was 201, south towards Jacobs, creeping down into the Jamestown area was 150, and then west towards Jamestown was 165 calls. Community risk reduction, every year we complete anywhere between 300 to 350 defensible space inspections. Currently, the city does not charge for those inspections, so just something to think about on a potential for revenue. Also, this past year, we created 2 Firewise communities, one in Arbona Circle area and one in Elks Hill. So that's really good, and we're encouraging people to come forward and create new ones. Fire Safe Council projects. We have the 2 green waste programs in the spring and the fall, and trying to meet the strategic priorities that the council has laid out for us. Fire and life safety inspections. We currently do around 139 business and residential inspections each year. We also send out self-inspections to those businesses because we can't get to all of them every single year. We have over 1,000 businesses in the city limits. So with one station, we can't reach everyone. So in between years, we try to inspect them every 3 years on site. We send out self-inspections. This also gives business owners educational material. So if there's a code change from the state that would affect their business, we put in educational material so they're aware of it and so they can prepare for it in the coming years when it's going to be enforced. We issued 58 burn permits, 33 hazardous operational permits. We've completed plan reviews and construction inspections as well. Every year we do annual training that's mandated by the state and federal government, and those requirements are extremely difficult, I think, in keeping our interns and our volunteers because it's a lot of time and consumes their off-duty, time to come in and do those trainings. So those aren't decreasing, and I see them being increased with the different changes in technology that we're seeing nowadays, the more hazards that are coming into our workplaces. Public education, we didn't participate in quite a few last year because of COVID. We're starting to come back out of it and getting requests, but we typically participate in the school and senior programs and giving fire prevention talks, smoke detector replacements in low-income areas. We partner with the Red Cross for that. And then the public fairs that are going on throughout the city and the community. Accomplishments this last year. So we were able to secure Homeland Security funding that procured end of life for our self-contained breathing apparatus bottles that kept our frontline engines in service. We did not have enough funding in the fire department's budget to replace those bottles, the air bottles that go on the packs that we wear. So without helping secure the funding through the county for Homeland Security, we would have been completely out of service, not being able to respond to a fire with self-contained breathing apparatus. So we secured $68,000 for not just the city of Sonora, but the rest of the 8 fire department agencies in the county. They were all facing the same issue. In 2012, I believe, is when they went in for a regional grant and were awarded and got the SCBA's. But the bottles are regulated by the Department of Transportation, and they only have a certain shelf life. And so after that time frame, they can no longer be placed in service. And so they're about $9,000 or $10,000 per bottle. So it's not a cheap expense. So it was nice to keep things able to keep things running. We still don't have enough bottles to supply our entire fleet, but enough to supply our first out engine company. And thanks to the CDBG and the hard work of our community development director over the years and city staff, the CDBG grant funding will be able to purchase new SCBA's for the department. So this is going to be amazing.
What are they made of?
That's what I was asking.
The bottles?
Because
Gold.
Yeah.
Gold.
Just about.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. What did I say? 10,000?
Yes.
I'm sorry. They're 900. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
I'm losing.
that,
They're 900 to 1,000. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the entire pack,
Yeah.
the whole outfit.
Okay.
So I apologize.
That's-
Yes,
Yeah.
they're about $1,000 for
I
the
was
bottles.
thinking scuba
maybe
is.
Yeah, that's just the bottles though. It's not the actual SCBA pack and mask and everything. So it's about 9,000 for the full outfit. Yeah. Sorry about that. Whew, that's a good one, huh? We tested for relief engineer this last fiscal year as well and secured funding for the 3rd engineer. We were able to hire 3 part-time engineers. They will still be staying with the city and relieving and acting in that capacity to help save on overtime costs. And our open to recruitment, as I stated earlier, will be coming up with testing next week, the first part of July. We hosted the biannual career day for Columbia College Fire Academy. And I know Jackie's not with us any longer, but she did a fabulous job on that video. So I want to say a shout out to her. It's posted up on the city's website under the fire department. And we're able to, that's where we hire our interns and our volunteers, is that collaborative relationship that we have with Columbia College. We applied for multiple grants. Still waiting to see if we're going to be awarded for this year, but we applied for assistance firefighter grant for a type 6 for new lockers for the station and also some extrication equipment. Also, we applied for staffing for adequate funding and emergency response, which is known as the SAFER grant for firefighters. So now that we have secured the 3rd engineer, we have 2 staffing. The SAFER grant this past year is a no match grant, and so we applied for firefighters to be able to hire them on for a limited term and have additional staff for the fire department. The Rural Fire Capacity Grant we applied for, that was formerly known as the VFA, the Volunteer Firefighters Assistance Grant. I'm just finishing up that last award of $39,000 and had put in for this year's award, so we're waiting to find out if we're going to get that one. Tuolumne County Community Grant Program, and then Fire Prevention and Safety Grants. So lots of administration and grants, lots of paperwork. Accomplishments again continues, update personnel annual review form to provide a more efficient evaluation process. So really happy that the city was open to looking at redoing the evaluation form. It's a lot straightforward for the employees. And thank you to Tracy and Chris on helping with putting that all together and making it fillable, because I don't know how to make it a fillable form. But we've already been using it and everyone is excited about it and appreciates the change. Continue professional skill development through outside classes. All of our captains and engineers try to continue their education through state and federal funded classes. Create a Chamber of Commerce outreach videos. So when we do receive grants or we're doing a public safety message, Chamber of Commerce has been a great partner for us. We've posted many videos about how to use a fire extinguisher, the extrication equipment that we received, and we're continuing that as well. Initiate update for standard operating procedures. We've been in the meet and confer process for about 6 months with the Firefighters Association, updating our standard operating procedures. I hope to accomplish and finish that. You'll see that in the next slide. We also assisted implementing the short-term rental ordinance. So we do the inspections for all of the Airbnbs now in the city limits for defensible space and life safety. Also implemented unified command with CAL FIRE and Tuolumne County Fire on the Washington fire. And we responded to 4 different incidents as part of the master mutual aid system in California, which was the Dixie Fire, Washington, Areola, and Windy fires. So our goals for next year are to recruit and hire that 3rd engineer position, which is part of that strategic priority from the council, collaborate with local agencies to support growth and increase efficiencies in the fire service. Still, I am continuing to be part of the Tuolumne County Fire Advisory Committee. We're hoping to bring the vegetation ordinance to the county in the next month or 2, develop fire safety preparedness and safety ordinances for the city, collaborate with PD on the homeless task force project, update the city's travel policy, which will encourage more professional development workshop attendance, and analyze the desirability and feasibility of annexation of certain unincorporated areas of the county into the city. So we're going to continue on procuring the CDBG grant funding projects and place them in service, which would be the new Type 6 fire engine, Type 3 fire engine, new SCBAs, and an exhaust removal system for the station. Continue dialogue with Chicken Ranch Rancheria for a cooperative fire protection reimbursement agreement. Implement a cloud-based inspection program for all fire inspections. We're currently using pen and paper. So I do have the software. I don't have all the time to get that implemented. So I'm hoping that is a goal we can get completed to be more efficient on doing our inspections. And then complete the meet and confer process for our standard operating procedures. So again, that's our brand new engine when we did our push-in at the station to put it in service. One of the houses that a structure fire that our crews were on, and then this is actually recent at the Tuolumne County Fair, Fire Prevention Fair a few weeks ago. Challenges and opportunities. The fire department had a full-time inspector, went down to 2 part-time inspectors, and then eventually kind of did away with the fire inspector position. So we're still vacant in that position. Myself and staff have picked up and complete the inspections as best we can. NFPA recommends that you have 3-0 staffing, which would include a full-time firefighter. The minimum is 3-0. They do recommend 4. So we would need an addition of 6 full-time firefighters to staff to be able to create that. Hopefully with our application on the SAFER grant, if we're awarded that, we can meet that. Instead of a part-time assistant, it would be nice to have a full-time assistant that was there every single day to answer calls and questions for the community. We have a little bit of delay right now with only having Lisa in there 3 days a week. A full-time information and technology specialist I desperately need because I bug Chris a lot. It would just be nice if the city had some type of full tech specialist that could help out with computers when systems go down, software updates. Right now we all depend on each other to help out, and so just wanted to bring that to your attention. Legislative regulations and requirement. Of course, these are the unfunded mandates from the state and federal government. Board of Forestry is now increasing and making a 3rd zone in the defensible space. Instead of 0 to 30 and 31 to 100, they are making the 0 to 5 foot space with absolutely no combustibles. So that's going to be coming down and something that we'll have to enforce. And then also the wild urban interface regulations. I know Rochelle has spoke to these before. They affect the planning, development, and the future of the city of Sonora for rural areas. So we're carefully watching those, but those mandates that do come down are going to be unfunded and something that we're going to have to enforce from the city standpoint. Real estate tractions now require defensible space inspections. Those I do charge for. Those are part of the separate, and our fee structure says additional inspections. That's not something that we have been providing before, so it followed under that category. But anytime someone sells a piece of property or with a house on it, within 6 months, they have to have a defensible space inspection. They're allowing up to 6 months right now. And then state required inspection reporting. We annually have to report to the state fire marshal on all of our business inspections as well. Capital projects, the fire station has not been painted or had annual maintenance since it was built. I mean, it has annual maintenance, but it has not been painted since it was built. HVAC system is still original. Roof replacement, we've had several companies come out and do repairs over the last 7 years, but we still have leaks. Tables and chairs for the EOC, we use a lot of hand-me-downs. So when the Opera Hall got new tables and chairs, we took the chairs, we love them, but our tables are definitely lacking. So trying to save up just extra money in the budget, there's not a lot of room to even buy small things like that. The fire museum, the exterior has a lot of rot and damage that needs to be replaced and painted. And then again, with the roof replacement there, it leaks really bad as well. So they've had to move a lot of the historical stuff so that it doesn't get damaged during the wintertime. So wildland is probably the biggest concern within the county and the city. At least it's the #1 risk priority in my heart. And it threatens Sonora every single year. And we work diligently to reduce that threat, providing public education and prevention, fuels reduction programs, collaborating with allied agencies and professional emergency response. And that's a picture of the Washington fire looking down from the county courthouse. So it was just pretty dramatic, and I wanted to share that with you all. So now it is the police department, unless you guys have questions.
Any questions from council? So I have one,
Yes.
and that is, what are the requirements for a volunteer fireman to actually volunteer? I know nothing about it. I'm sure that a certain minimum level of
Yeah, so there's
training
about,
and a certain maximum age or
So,
minimum age.
So to be a volunteer firefighter, you have to attend some type of accredited academy. It could be an in-house academy, Tuolumne County still puts on their own, or attend the college academy. You have to either be an emergency responder, which they call an EMR, emergency medical responder, or an EMT, emergency medical technician, to be able to put your hands on a patient and treat a patient. So that includes hours and hours of classes. So
Right.
the academy is a full semester. EMR is about a 2-month class. EMT is about a 3-month commitment. And then you also have to have CPR as well. And that's just to apply.
Right, so.
So
it is
then, yeah, when you get
hearing
onto
that.
the department, there's state and federal mandate trainings for how to wear an SCBA, to be fit tested, ethics, hearing protection, respiratory protection. There's about 20 classes that they have to complete, ICS training, and then they can actually get on the engine and respond.
So can I safely presume that the only people who actually qualify as volunteers then are retired firefighters or somebody else who just wants to?
A lot of our students, so it's not,
Okay.
yeah, a lot of our students, if they,
Just trying
our
to get
internship, they're
experience.
working a full-time shift on,
Okay.
with one of our battalions, one of our
Okay.
platoons. And so that's a 10-day to 12-day a month commitment, 24 hours. So they can't, if they can't make that commitment, then they'll actually become a volunteer. So it's less hours required of them.
Because my presumption was that there's a very high level of minimum ability that's required, and that you just don't pick up people off the street who say, I want to help the community. So,
Yeah, it's
Okay.
changed over the years because of the state and federal
Right.
requirements. It used to be anyone could volunteer, you can hang onto the hose, you can do this, you can do whatever, could just come help us. But back in the early 1800s, that's what a fire department was the community coming together and volunteering to put out the fires.
somebody moved buckets
That's exactly, yeah. So,
once upon a time, because you were a volunteer, weren't you?
I never was a volunteer,
Oh,
no.
okay,
Not through, not officially.
official like that,
Yeah.
okay.
But off-duty firefighters are often volunteers. I can think of the folks that live up here, but work in the Bay Area or work in the valleys. Don't some of those not anymore?
no.
They don't.
Probably 80% of our volunteers are interns that were in our program and went through a year and a half and either got a job somewhere else and still wanted to help out the community, and so
Yeah.
they still volunteer. Or it's people that couldn't make that commitment as an intern, but still wanted to volunteer and get the experience.
Another thing is, if I remember, there was the magic number was like 276 hours of training before you could actually get on to.
I think it's increased to about 300. But
Yeah, I was gonna say, it must have probably increased,
yeah.
because that was about 5-10 years ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I have
So-
a list, 2
So
pages long
that's just-
of what the
that's
requirements are.
Just to be able to be a volunteer.
Right, well, I just,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I asked, because I was both curious for myself, and, I mean, some people actually listen to or watch our meetings, and
Our volunteers and interns are amazing. They make
Yeah.
quite the commitment. They get a lot of vast experience out of this, especially for our interns. Our goal is to get them a job somewhere, and we've been very successful in that. So,
cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
yep, thank you.
Mm. Chief Vanderweel. It's been nothing but good news.
I was never a volunteer because I couldn't stand getting up on a ladder. I was scared of
Oh.
heights.
Well, after breaking my back falling out of a tree, I
Interior
am
now.
not so sanguine about getting up high
Neither.
either.
Age down, that makes sense. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council. Rochelle was just commenting how fortunate I am to go last, but I beg to differ, because the other 3 department heads are tough acts to follow. So I'll do my best, so bear with me. And that concludes my presentation. Did I hit it again?
Well, thank you.
What was
All
that?
right, so there's
Brevity
a,
is the essence of wit.
This is a snapshot of 24/7, 365, modest, small police department budget. As Chris mentioned, it's minus a vehicle. And we also didn't account for, or we didn't anticipate being able to fund a SRO through grants this year. We're approaching the year mark, and we still have not heard whether or not we've been awarded. So we're kind of writing that one off, and we'll be thinking about different options. Obviously, like the entire city as a whole, salaries take up a large portion of our budget. IT and IT equipment are extremely expensive for us. It's just constant, and of course, there's energy, like Chris was mentioned, that's going up pretty good. Equipment and equipment repairs, all big money drawing aspects of the police department. So, our mission is to deliver policing service to residents, merchants, and visitors of Sonora while safeguarding the life and property with compassion, dignity, and equality through professionalism, fairness, and diligence. Not everything we do is law enforcement, so I like to use the term policing services whenever possible, because it really encompasses more than just law enforcement. Some of the things we do include, but are not limited to, civil disputes, looking for missing persons and runaways. We do welfare checks. We assist partnering agencies, and partners in the community, such as schools, medical, fire, mental health. We do safety presentations, mentorships, community engagement, and community organizing. So it's a little more than just law enforcement. So we have authorized staffing, includes 1 chief of police, 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, 10 officers, which would also include the investigator position, which comes from the officer allotments, 5 full-time dispatchers, 2 part-time dispatchers, 3 CSO, and a full-time records technician. Our functions include patrol, which obviously does more than patrol. There's traffic enforcement, there's security checks, vehicle abatements, towing. We've got arrests, investigations, court appearances. There's a lot just patrol does. Then we have investigations for the more major crimes, more in-depth investigations. Our investigator just finished up one that she's been working on for 6 months. More in-depth investigation, and that's not the only one she's been working on. So there's a lot of work to go on in that investigations office. Dispatch and records, those responsibilities are expanding. It seems like on a daily basis, due to a lot of state reporting and federal mandates. We have animal control, training unit, and so like a part of the responsibility for the training unit is making sure we meet state mandates for professional standards training, and also internal training that we need just as a maintenance, such as range, defensive tactics, and of course, when we hire somebody new, we got to make sure they're properly trained through the field training program. So continued, we have professional standards as part of our functions, and that really includes a lot, which is recruitment, backgrounds, complaints, IAs, training, compliance with state and federal mandates and guidelines, policy review and submittal. We have, unfortunately, I put animal control in there twice, must be pretty important. Vehicle abatement, parking enforcement, public information, which is becoming more and more important over the years, information and technology. Our volunteer unit, which requires management and supervision and training for our volunteers. We also manage, do smaller functions like manage the taxi permits and licenses, ABC permits, and we do community presentations. So I think you're all familiar with the demographics here in Sonora. But I think it's important to recognize that the number of people we serve is far greater than the residential population. So that's what the 25,000 is in there for. Visitors, workforce, shoppers, people coming for medical services, you name it. Everybody comes into Sonora, and I think we know that. Obviously, we have a couple high schools, a couple elementary schools, some shopping centers, and our gaming casinos also impact our workload. Even though they're nearby, they're not in the city limits. So your police staff does a lot of work. Much never meets the public media logs, but we average between 17,700 and 19,300 incidents per year. In contrast, TCSO, Sheriff's Department, in 2020 they reported 30,000 incidents. So we're somewhere around 59% of the calls for service that our Sheriff's Department handle. So we stay pretty busy. We've over 2,000 plus 911 calls per year, and these are some of the major crimes that we report out to the state and federal agencies. So we don't hear about them a lot, and but they're there. They're working behind the scenes on some of the bigger investigations that for one reason or other are kept confidential. Am I not skipping? I'm sorry, I missed a sign. There we go. There. So there's a number as I was just talking about. So
Where's that info?
all right. So believe it or not, there's you wouldn't think it, but 70 DUIs per year within the city limits. 130 assaults, lots of larcenies, 186 larcenies, and of those larcenies, we have reported $694,000 worth of loss, but a lot of those larcenies, they're unreported dollar amounts that they don't know or they don't have a value for their property. So we'll enter in our property system a value of $1 as a placekeeper. So we know it's much higher than that. So our goals this time last year included some of the following. So one of them was to establish a nonprofit to support a canine program. And as you know, the Friends of Sonora Police Department was established as a 501c3, and some purchases has already been made towards that project of canine, and we're well on our way to making it happen. So it's really starting to be something that we can see and almost tangible as far as the results. So that's exciting. Another goal was to create an efficient and effective hiring process, as well as a better retention program for our agency. And we worked closely with our HR and identified some potential barriers in recruitment and hiring process, and we lined out those bullets, what's listed out there in the bullets of kind of the priority areas to work on. And I will say that, as far as the applicants we're getting, we've noticed a difference, an improvement. So something's working there. I don't know if it's one particular item or all of them combined, but I would say so far we've been successful in seeing positive results from that goal. Enhancing employee training and development was one of them. We put in over 1,000 hours of professional development training for our team, and those are just the ones that we tracked off of our post training, because I can pull a record and count the hours, or at least estimate the hours. But there's additional training that we've been able to send folks to that doesn't necessarily get reported to post. And so, however, we are also limited by staffing shortages. So some of our plans for training and professional development, we fell a little short of what we were hoping to meet, but we did get there. We did get a lot in nonetheless. One of the accomplishments we had was a CHP cannabis grant, which resulted in some money for training, for DUI detection, specifically related to narcotics. And yes, I'm on the right slide. I saw some confused faces, so I just had to check. And then also some money for DUI statuation, some overtime for that. And I think most notably, we got $20,000 for a changeable message sign trailer that incorporates a radar trailer. And also it has statistic counting that we can use as well, and other capabilities that we haven't quite even explored yet, because it's very advanced technology. So we're happy to have gotten that. Another goal was to continue with our Coffee with a Cop program, especially as we expected to see coming out of the pandemic. But we went back in for a little while, and we were still able to pull off 4 events, and all of them were pretty successful with positive feedback. There we go. Some other goals were to fill vacant dispatch position. We're working on it. We're on our second round of trying to make that happen right now. We got someone in the background. Facility improvements and security was on there for our previous goals. We were able to implement or put some more perimeter and lobby cameras up, safety ballard enhancement out front, property and evidence storage expansion. Basically, we grew out of our property evidence room. We had to find a new location. Kind of pushed our general storage out, and we're working on that right now, but we were able to expand on that. A goal that we are also working on is our video surveillance registration program, which is basically a program for citizens to register their cameras with us, and a volunteer program where the idea is for them to tell us that they're willing to share if we need it in a specific area, and we'll reach out to them based on the database we have and ask for it at the time of investigation. Saves hours and hours of on the ground canvassing to see who has cameras. And I will say that a couple major crimes last year, both ours and one that CHP was working, going door to door asking for those cameras in the community, helped us solve those crimes significantly. Radio communications upgrade was one of our goals for basically a new repeater site. Originally, we anticipated this project to be about $45,000 to put a new repeater site in. We identified the area as the forest station on Greenlee Road. We've been working with them, got approvals to utilize their tower. We got money through Homeland Security grant. And then as we started digging in with our radio technicians, we realized that a lot of our equipment is outdated, unsupported, and could cause some major failures once we start hooking up. So that program, that goal really went from a $45,000 to an $83,000 project that we're still working on. And I believe, with the Homeland Security grant monies for the following years, I think we're able to get most of that out of that funding source. Again, SRO funding was one of our goals. We fell short here. We weren't able to get the funding we thought we were going to get. So again, we're going to be maybe reconsidering how to look at funding that important position. And we have an expanded peer support program on here. It wasn't a previous goal, but it's something that we developed in our police department a couple years ago, and over this past year it has really expanded and really taken on new life. And it's now become a regional peer support team, where not just members of our departments, but other departments are going out and assisting other agencies and partners in the community. And a lot of that is due to the efforts of one of our dispatchers, Sarah, and of course our lieutenant. They've been instrumental in making that happen. So even though it wasn't a goal, I thought it was pretty important to put it on there as an accomplishment. Okay. So moving forward from here, our proposed goals is to continue to collaborate with the city administration to enhance our recruitment and retention capabilities. This, recruitment has just consumed a great deal of not just my time, but human resources management. It's just a constant battle we're up against, and it's not just my agency, my department, as you've heard. It's across the board. So we're going to continue work on that. Ongoing effort to strengthen employee development. Training is always, something near and dear to my heart, and I believe that the more trained our personnel are, the more competent they are, the better we are for managing risk. We have, the high turnover rate is highlighting this need for more training. Our experience levels and competency are playing a part on why we need more training, and of course it also improves retention, liability, and basically enhances community trust. We want to work with the city administration to really identify what a fleet management program plan will look like. We also want to implement public safety surveillance and APL programs, which should maximize available staffing resources as a force multiplier, and help us apprehend crime suspects and protect crime victims, locate missing persons, and safeguard our infrastructure. A lot of this we've secured $33,000 also through the Homeland Security to begin this project, and it's starting to come around to completion, hopefully pretty soon. There we go. Continue to fill vacant positions, facility improvements. We want to, we're slowly upgrading, one camera at a time, basically 2 cameras at a time at our police department to get rid of the grainy resolution and get some cameras out there that we can actually read a plate that's in our parking lot would be helpful. So we're working on that. Identify storage areas for our standard properties, so not property evidence, but just extra items that we have that was displaced by expanding our property evidence. And also, a lot of it was over at the School Street building that we're going to have to vacate here pretty soon when the city decides exactly the best use for that building. And then we also want to look at replacing outdated and unsupported equipment, and those are mobile data computers, tasers, body-worn cameras, and complete our video surveillance registration program that I discussed a little bit ago. So this is the project I was talking about with the new repeater site. Basically, we have poor communications in certain parts of the city. We're hoping to add a repeater at this the site over there by the Forest Service building on Greenlee Road. We've done a frequency study, and that seems to be about the best location for us to add a repeater. They've offered us initially a verbal agreement to allow us to utilize a piece of their antenna to mount it on for very, very affordable. I don't want to say it out loud because it's still in the works, but nowhere close to what we're paying for our current repeater site rental. Matter of fact, I'll pay it out of pocket. It's so cheap if need be. So anyway, like I said, it basically due to unsupported equipment and the transition from analog to digital, it went from not being able to communicate with our base units and our portables and our mobiles to when we change out that base unit radio in dispatch, our console, which is the computer system in dispatch that connects and integrates with the radio system, is outdated and unsupported as of 7 years ago. So the radio technicians were like, we're not touching it because you could have a major failure and then it's going to cost you a whole bunch of money right now to fix it. So we're working towards getting that additional money over the next couple of years through the Homeland Security.
Wow.
Well, I think you've heard this across the board, but at the top of our challenges list is staffing. Right now, if we consider our people in training, people that are on modified duty, my deployable patrol staff is at 41%. So we're working really hard to change that.
That's a little
but that's where we're at right now. And like the other departments, we've seen a 17% reduction in staffing since the mid 2000s. Competing wages plays a role in that. Well, at least in our current staffing challenges to fill these vacant positions. We talked about industry market value earlier. I think Chris did as a big challenge for us locally. Of course, housing and cost and availability locally. It's very hard for someone to find a place to live. We have a couple officers that were commuting until they could find one, and still hasn't. Actually, one of them moved on to another agency by now, but could never find a place, an affordable place to live close here in the city. So the other ones, we had a couple here. They were at least two other officers were here at least a year before they found some place that they could afford to live. The other challenges, obviously, increase in crime. Our calls for service increased by 10% since 2005. Violent crime in California is up 12% since 2011. And lots of legislation that impacts the way we do business and staffing and time staffing puts towards certain items. But AB 109, Prop 47, and some emergency measures reducing prison sentences really impacted policing services over the past several years. And I want to say, if I remember correctly, just the emergency measures over the past 2 years, between 11 and 17,000 prisoners were released out on the, out of the prisons.
Out into the wild.
And so they don't give local jurisdictions really the tools to manage that additional workload. And a lot of times I don't think I'm hearing, and I'm not for sure, but the programs that we used to be accustomed to when people are paroled, they're not really available for them either. So that's another issue. Police reform bills, the impact on staff and management resources have been pretty significant. There's more reporting requirements. CPRAs have gone up considerably. More training mandates, policy management. I'm sure I don't know if you're aware, but RIPA and the stop data have been implemented, and that was a lot of work to get implemented. And pretty much most agents were told to kind of figure it out. Fortunately, we had RIMS, which was a big savior who helped us with a lot of that implementation. So, other challenges include the homeless crisis. A large percentage of our calls for service are somehow associated with dealing with this crisis. And then the opioid epidemic is just, it's off the charts like never before. We've seen a big increase in heroin like I've never seen, and then that dropped off, and now we're seeing it's fentanyl. They're transitioning to fentanyl, and it's brutal for everybody involved, but it's quite a challenge for our agency as well as fire and medical. So opportunities looking forward, we're exploring a funding source for our homeless outreach team. We've made an application, or at least a letter of intent to apply for the continuum of care. Some money's there. We're asking for about $114,000 for a 1-year pilot program to help with an outreach. It's a homeless outreach support team, which will also be in collaboration with local agencies such as behavioral health and social services and fire department, like the fire chief mentioned. And other opportunities, of course, like I mentioned, was Friends of Sonora Police Department. Canine's already been purchased. That payment's been made. We haven't identified the actual animal yet, but we've actually the Faith Hamilton's and the Friends of Sonora Police Department have made that purchase. And then they're also planning additional fundraising campaigns. So that'll also help out with some special projects that we feel are very important. And I think that is
Almost it.
Am I supposed to roll right into that, or? Okay, so as Chris mentioned before, there are some supplemental requests. And I'm pretty sure council's aware, because I've been talking about it for a while, but our fleet is old, outdated, worn out. So we have 6 in-service vehicles that are 20 years or older, and 3 that are 10 years old, with getting some high mileage on them. We have, our 2 newer vehicles that we consider sustainable, I'm sorry, 4, consists of 2 2014 Caprices and 2 2019 Tahoes. We do have 3 Explorers on order currently. 2 of those were supported by a USDA grant, which are 75-25 match. And if you remember, January of 2021 is when when council voted to accept that grant. So we're still waiting. They are in the build shop right now. Those two vehicles have been built. They're in Sacramento, and they're waiting to be upfitted, basically. And the other one we're still waiting on was a more recent order, and we're still waiting on that manufacturer to actually build that vehicle. Initially, when we submitted that grant documents and made that order for those 2, we were told about 6 months. Expect 6 months, but things got worse, and between supply chains and the chips and everything else, here we are. So who knows how much longer it's going to take as we move forward ordering vehicles.
What year will the vehicles be when they get here?
I'm sorry. What's that?
I mean, are they going to be like?
Oh yeah, no. I'm wondering if there'll still be a warranty.
Are
So.
they gonna
Yeah,
be,
right.
Are they going to be like 2020?
Yeah. Hopefully they're not outdated and unsupported by the time they roll in.
Obsolete on arrival.
Chips that are too
Send
old
them
to
back.
So, as a supplemental request, we're hoping to get another vehicle at least on order to get that ball rolling. Based on our current age of our fleet and the numbers, I would anticipate by 2024, if we have 6 more vehicles replaced, then we should be able to get into like a regular replacement program that would just sustain us after that. We are, as if you can tell that we are able to expand the life of these vehicles pretty well by the way we issue them and assign them. And then of course we have a pretty outstanding mechanic down there at Public Works that keeps things rolling for us. Another item on supplemental requests, are the body camera and a taser bundle. So a little history. In 2017, we contracted with a company called VView for our body worn cameras, and that contract included, the actual cameras themselves, a cloud storage, a secure cloud storage, and also a replacement and maintenance program for damaged or just needed upgrades. VView was ultimately bought out by Axon. Axon then said, well, your VViews are obsolete and unsupported. And so our contract ends midway through this year. So we're looking at ways to put new cameras out on patrol. So Axon is offering a bundle because they also sell and manufacture really the tasers. And so they have taser bundles because tasers are fairly expensive in themselves. I think they're about $1,755 each, and we have 15 officers, if you count the reserves that we need to field them with. So one of the benefits is if we do bundle them, then we were able to get some options like activation. So if you draw your taser, it'll automatically activate that camera. We would get the storage that we're used to, and also some add-ons that we can buy later which means like an activation add-on, so we could turn the, we can buy a little adapter, and so every time you hit your patrol lights, your VDU camera goes on. It's very hard sometimes to remember to flick it on when things are happening. And we get that a lot, and it's usually when you're frustrated that you don't have that video is when things are happening. So that would be a great addition to have there. A lot of our tasers right now are 10-year-old technology, the models that we have. So, you know, if we could upgrade to these, we have to upgrade to tasers anyway. So we're either purchasing them individually, piecemealing it, or and then getting a different body camera type program, or a bundle, which I think this is the premier package. Looking around and checking in to see what other agencies are doing, what the industry best practices are for body cameras. They pretty much end up right here with Axon. What we've done in the budget to keep the status quo, however, is we found an option through provision for just the cameras, which is something we can make work with our existing budget. They are not top of the line, but they're vetted. They're good equipment, but they wouldn't come with those other options like the automatic turn on when you present tasers, or turn on your lights, and then we would be purchasing tasers individually, and so 14 tasers is about $24,570 at current price.
Excuse me, Chief.
Yes.
How often are tasers deployed very often, or, I mean, being non-lethal, that I would, just curious, I have no idea. I mean,
Technically, a taser use, as far as reporting goes, is drawing it. So
Right.
if you draw it, there's a arc as a warning, and there's also a drive. They call it a drive stun, which is not deploying the probes. It's just like the old school
cattle prod type
right,
thing.
yeah, one of those type of deals. A whole lot less amps than that, but yes. And then there's the actual where the probes come out from a distance. So the deployment with the probes, fortunately, we don't have more than just a handful a year. When the laws changed about when you can deploy them, and of course the lawsuits came along, and people are second guessing when they should be able to deploy them. But you know, they are very safe, and they do prevent injury from both the arrestee, and also the officer doesn't have to go hands-on. And 9 times out of 10, when there's a deployed taser use, even you know, the probes, any injuries are generally from falling down and hitting the ground, rather than the actual taser effects itself. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I just had no idea whether, I had no idea, not even a beginning idea. Anything would be just a wag, and so
But a couple times a month, we
Yeah.
we have to deploy them, and or at least
Yeah.
present them
Right.
as a show of
Right.
and give them the warning. And a lot of times that's a deterrent
Yeah.
for a lot of folks,
way better than
which
pulling a firearm.
which helps helps
Mhm.
everybody.
Thank you.
All right, so the supplemental requests also include mobile computers. So like a lot of our equipment, with years of budgets that we weren't able to add anything to, or try to as we made through the recession, and then the first part of COVID, status quo, as Chris would mention. We have a lot of outdated mobile data computers, and basically what these are they're laptop type computers that are mounted in the patrol vehicles, and they relay real-time information to the officers in the field. So For instance, the dispatcher will get a call, respond to this location for this type of crime, and as she's or he is getting information from the caller, that information is being updated. The officer can look at this and see real-time updates, and so it helps as a safety measure there. It helps for better deployment of officers and resources, but it also allows them in the field to search databases instead of calling in and having dispatch do each and every little function like that for them while they're out in the field. So they basically, they're all Windows 7 models, and we've been slowly trying to, I think we replaced 2 last year. We're going to try to replace a couple this year. But Cindy, our IT, gripes at me all the time because they're so old, and she's constantly having to, she calls them patches that she's having to make. So, any supplemental request would be a couple additional MDTs that we can buy. They are expensive. They're a lot more than your standard laptop because they're built for this type of work. And there's certain, yes.
So I liked Windows 7, but it became unsupported for the public some number of years ago.
Right.
Is it still supported for the police, or are you just kind of kludging along and doing the best you can?
Well, if we didn't have Cindy working IT for us, it wouldn't be useful.
Okay.
What's happening?
Pardon me? Right, well, and I'm on Windows 11
And so now we've
I don't like
replaced
it.
servers over the years that have either gone bad, and they're all Windows 10, and they're not
Okay.
talking with our mobiles. And
So-
now RIMS, which is our CAD system, they're not supporting Windows 7 anymore.
Okay.
And so it's becoming even more challenging.
So the city
we
is
really
going to
get
need to
these-
address that.
We need to get those replaced.
Okay, thank you. That,
And like everything else, we've purchased a couple to go with the new patrol cars, but we're experiencing supply chain issues with those as well. They're back ordered.
Okay.
I think we had some on order for about 4 months now, and I think that we finally got 2 in, I'm sorry, for those. So they take a while to get in as well. We're also looking to, if there's any additional monies. So we have what we call wrap restraints, and we have 2 of them right now. And the process is for an officer to sign one out for each shift and sign it back in at the end of the shift. And sometimes it gets problematic when shifts overlap and you got to somehow transfer that equipment, and then the accountability and the integrity of how it's put away when one officer has to use it and then doesn't put it away and the other officer expects it to be a certain way, because this particular system, it takes a little bit of knowledge on how to pack it and put it away right, so you can put it on correctly when situations aren't common and docile. So we have 2, and they're I don't know if you've heard the old hobble restraints. Usually used to hobble the legs, and sometimes actually connect the old way to do it was connect the hobbles with a strap to the handcuffs so they couldn't move around and kick things in the back of a patrol car. What happens with those is people lose their seating, even if they're seat belted. They try to find their way onto their sides or their back to try to kick out of it, or sometimes their stomach, and then you get asphyxiation issues. And fortunately, we haven't had any, but that can happen with the wrong type of restraints. So these are designed to eliminate those dangers, and we can get people medical care while they're actually in these restraints, which is one positive benefit, and obviously reducing injuries and damage to equipment. For some reason, people think they can kick their way out of patrol cars. It never works, but it does end up costing money and sometimes causes injuries. So, ideally, if we had 9 additional units, that would be great for each unit for our agency. But if we can get, 5 more units, that would cost us around $6,000 to at least get a few more and work towards deploying them all into each vehicle. All right. Any questions on any of that from me?
Thank you, no, let's see.
I saw a lot of this, so
I interjected when
nothing's
I
too
could
crazy, so.
remember it. So,
All right, so I
thank you
apologize
very
for
much,
being
Chief.
dry, but what's that?
I said, thank you very much.
All right.
So
Yeah, no, that was very comprehensive.
I'm going to take the liberty of calling for a 5-minute break right now. And we will resume in 5 minutes. That's okay with the rest of the council.
It's good. I think.
So calling the council meeting back into order.
Sure. Sure.
Is Mr. Gorski,
Yeah.
you taking the stand?
I'm taking it over from here.
Okay.
So do you have any questions so far in our budget presentation?
Yes, one of them.
Sure.
Relative to your presentation, and that was, do we have any newer estimates of what we expect from cannabis next year, or how much additional that we would think would come from that?
We don't. We used an estimate that basically it was about 20% higher than what we did this last fiscal. And that's based on the second dispensary was already paying us about $10,000 a month.
Okay.
And so we anticipate some more, but it's hard to, calculate or to predict that it would be double what we had from the one.
Okay. Well, that seems like a reasonable one. And then
And,
my other
and we'll
question,
certainly update when we get closer, mid-year's
Right.
coming, and then we'll make updates.
and then I think you said 18% insurance bumps. Is that just reflective of them trying to get ahead of the inflation curve?
It's reflective of their difficulty in finding reinsurers for the large claim liability. And it's apparently it's just got a countrywide phenomenon after COVID.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. So,
Okay, so next slide basically is sort of to begin wrapping this up. So we looked at the next fiscal, the budget that we're presenting, which is the fiscal year 22-23, and then we did some forecasting for 23-24 and 24-25. And the theme of this is basically using just the revenue estimates that we've had. We have a history of estimates for the city, and then the negotiated increases in the MOUs, and of course we're looking at inflation, the effects of inflation. But the bottom line is the budgets become more and more negative. So you can see next year, we are, 22-23, we would have a deficit of around $213,000. We don't have a deficit simply because we have the one-time ARPA funds. If you go out one additional year, you can see how that grows now to $281,000. And in 24-25, that will increase to $348,000.
Are those conservative or?
They are very conservative, and they do not anticipate a recession. Now, as we've gone from when I, completed these slides a few weeks ago, as we sit here tonight, the chance of a recession grows almost daily, and those would become much more negative if that was to occur. We are or will be facing, increased costs for almost everything we do, supplies, energy, it's all going up in price. And again, these expenditures are growing faster than our revenues. So one of the ideas is, if you look at this, we have a couple of years to plan for this. We have some additional ARPA funds I'll show you in another slide. how those funds are being spent. We need to make a plan. So we do have a couple of years to do that. So one of the things we looked at was from the past 10, 12 years. This goes back just to prior to our last recession. The city had 58 employees, and for fiscal year 22-23, we're budgeting just under 45. So we've lost basically 13 employees since 2006 and 7. And so every time the calculation of revenues versus expenditures and the idea that our expenditures are growing quicker than revenues, it's a long running theme, and the city has simply cut staff to make that always fit. And we're getting to a point where that isn't going to be possible anymore if we want to have this level of service. It just, there's no low hanging fruit anymore, and there's nothing easy to cut. And this is a graph that basically shows how between 06, 07 or 07, 08, staffing was slashed. And then that's how everything, how we've balanced budgets over, the last 12 or 13 years. So some of the challenges that we're facing, as I've said before, growth rate of expenses is exceeding growth rate of revenues. That's been addressed for many years now with simply by reducing staffing levels to account for the rising costs. There's no low hanging fruit. I mean, I was asked, what do we cut? Basically, it was a question someone asked me, and there is nothing easy anymore to cut without reducing services. And as we've seen with the sergeant position at the police department, these positions are harder and harder to fill if you're not paying market rates. So the police sergeant position had over 2,700. When I looked, I think it's now like 3,000 views, and we have not seen a single application from floating this position. And it's simply because we're not competitive. We are paying under market for these positions, and so it provides us with no way to compete with other agencies. And so, we do have a couple of years. We have fund balance. We've had these ARPA funds. It allows us some time to develop a plan. And so some of the questions that, when you sit in my desk, you start asking yourself, the city has just over 30 miles of roads that we maintain, and we have an annual funding level at $260,000. And it's just impossible to see how you could potentially maintain those roads with that money. Some of the other things, the Mountain Shadow Cemetery, there's no more plots for sale. The only ones we do sell is when someone sells one back to us, but it requires public works staff to maintain. And in essence, it's more and more general fund contribution to make that happen. If you look in the budget document, as far as the capital projects, most of those are leaking roofs or buildings that need to be painted. Basically, it's deferred maintenance. And again, one of the things that happened over the years to balance these budgets was just to defer maintenance. And again, I was listening to the county presentation today, and they have the same thing. They've deferred maintenance. They're, HVAC systems that are now 20, 30 years old, and there's no money to maintain these things. So how do we do that at the city? How does the city maintain these properties as they age? We see that with our fleet. PD's fleet is very old. True listed exactly the years of the cars. But the question is, how do you maintain these things when the average police car age is basically a 2005 Crown Vic? We do have a couple of other ones that don't run that we use for parts, but that's certainly not a strategy or a fleet plan. And then, if we're not paying competitive rates, it's, wages, it's difficult to compete for existing and future employees. And why would people want to work for us? And that will be a question that we'll have to ask. Before CalPERS made their change with PEPRA, the retirement plan was very aggressive, and it was a good plan. And people would, be willing to take less pay for the classic CalPERS, they call it. And with PEPRA, that is no longer the case. It's just not competitive enough to be the only reason people work here. And so the question then becomes, are we making the necessary investments now? So in 3, 4, 5 years, we have a plan. And so either we have to start thinking of revenue enhancement strategies, and that could be anything from doing fee studies to potentially a sales tax increase, or we'll have to start looking at what are the levels of service we can really provide. And this slide basically shows us the American Rescue Plan that we've received. In 21-22, we had $581,000 to balance the 21-22 budget. We spent $312,902. We're going to get our second allocation in July of $581,786. So total available for 22-23 is at $850,000. The current budget as it sits, we're spending $213,550 of the ARPA funds. And then we'll be looking, Melissa will look at some of the supplemental expenses or the court requests. The ones that we have highlighted represent another $163,500 of ARPA funds. And so if you think of it that way, for 23-24, we can still save some money to balance that budget. That's now 2 years out. We would have $473,000 to do that. And with that, I will let Melissa handle supplemental requests.
Awesome.
And I'll give you the slide.
First and foremost, I just want to thank staff for the work that they did on this budget. Chris for his leadership, the development and the facilitation with the department heads. And also I just want to thank the department heads for their contribution to this effort as well. I think it's really our time as a team to shine before you and highlight the successes of the employees that work for the city of Sonora, the workload and their accomplishments, but also to really highlight and communicate to you as council members and policymakers the needs and challenges that they face in the field. And I know that this team has worked hard. They continue to work hard to give the city of Sonora the best they can with very limited resources, as you can see. So Chris has highlighted for you our current financial situation. Obviously, we have balanced the budget on the federal stimulus funding, going into that about $213,000. We've identified what the department heads have put forward as supplemental requests. And you can see that those are needs that they've identified that are not funded in the status quo budget. And so they total 1.6 million. As Chris has highlighted, the highlighted recommended supplemental requests are based on his and my recommendation of all of those put forward by the department heads and the available funding that we have and the proposed budget deficits that we're projecting into future years, as well as the concern about a looming recession. You can see there's substantial need. We've identified by department. We've given you a description, a proposed fund source, and then obviously the total. You'll see some that are council priorities, the climate action plan being one of them. I do have a meeting with SBC. We are hoping to partner with them, look for the grant funding that was mentioned by Charles Segerstrom, and that potentially be a project that we can incorporate into the budget with additional grant funding. Though at this point, without secured revenue, it's not identified as an approved or recommended supplemental request because it would take away from fund balance or the stimulus funding. I think for me, the good news is that our unrestricted fund balance is strong at just over 3 million, that Chris has developed and proposed a budget that doesn't spend down any of the fund balance going into this year. though we do rely on the stimulus funding to balance. And all the new revenue that we're bringing, though expenses are quickly outpacing, all that new revenue is now necessary to sustain basic operations. I think that looking forward, we do have, as Chris mentioned, a few years to develop a plan and a strategy. At this point in time, staff would recommend that you approve the status quo budget as recommended with the highlighted supplemental requests. And those are to pre-fund the pension reserve at 75,000, one patrol vehicle at 74, the mobile computers for PD at 85, the tasers, 6 at 11,000, the wrap restraints, 5 of them at 6,000, the cameras, 2 of them at 14. And I should mention that the LRP cameras were presented to the Public Safety Committee, and the Public Safety Committee recommended that those cameras be added as supplemental requests. They supported that item after a presentation by PD on that project. And then obviously homeless encampment cleanup, as you know, that is an issue that we have been struggling with. We anticipate the need to contract for services into the future to provide for some encampment cleanups on city property. So we want to be prepared to either support our PD, our fire, or our public works department so that they have those resources to engage in cleanup efforts should they need to. So I'm happy to entertain any questions that you have about the overall budget, the supplemental requests that are presented, or if you have any other priorities that you would like for us to consider. But ultimately, with your approval of the recommended items, this would allow for $473,000 to go into the prior year, or not the prior year, the future year. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Would the other
I saw your face, Colette, and I went, oh, that was wrong. And then also we could reevaluate at mid-year. What I would recommend as well is that we reevaluate at mid-year with these supplemental requests in mind. So if you had any additional projects, I would recommend we add them to the list of supplemental requests so that we keep them in the queue. And then also I recommend that we move forward with the planning of the organizational assessment and the strategic planning process, so that as we develop this plan and we identify the limited amount of resources needed to sustain basic levels of operations, that we're very strategic in moving that forward. So any questions that you have for me?
Well, I think you answered it. I just wanted to confirm that those that were not recommended would stay as priority supplemental requests.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean, if we're going to be looking at the fee study to improve our revenue, it seems like it should, stay in the, some of these things. And the roof on the fire, oh, that's the fire museum. What happened to the
Just above
fire
it.
station?
Just above it.
Oh, okay, good. All right, thank you. Bye.
Yeah, I would think that the city fee study and also economic development should be the little higher priority than in the ones that we're not looking at, that are not highlighted, because they both look at revenue for being able to, for us in the future.
That's going to be the most important feature ahead of us, really, is revenue and
Yeah, and
what.
a lot of these deferred maintenance things we just keep kicking the can down the road.
So,
You know, that's really bothersome. But I think those two items are the most important, so we can see if we can't get more revenue so that we can do some of these other things, or the future council anyway.
And if you'd like us to move forward with any of those items, we can add those to the list. Just know that any priorities, then we would be subtracting from the 473 balance. Though the projected budget deficit going into not this upcoming year, but the year following that would be 281,000.
So
We can also complete a few tasks like the class and comp and the organizational assessment at mid-year reevaluate. We can identify those as council's number 1 and number 2 priorities. I think with the economic development funding and that item, we had initially recommended it. The county had reached out and asked if we wanted to partner on a economic development director position. They recently re-strategized that and have made it a position within the CAO's office. So I think actually on the economic development front, I need more time to coordinate with the CAO's office to better understand the program and what that investment or partnership would look like. So I think the economic development would be a great one to reevaluate at mid-year. And then I think given workload for staff, if we're able to issue the RFPs on the class and comp and get that work underway, reevaluating the fee study at mid-year, I think would be a great balance as well. I think also just to let council know in terms of revenue enhancement strategies, after the Board of Supervisors meeting today, we do plan on bringing an item before the new council on the July 6th meeting. Is it the 6th or the 5th? The 5th, the July 5th. I knew I was going to say the wrong date. Wanted to say the 5th, and I thought, no, that's wrong. We'll be bringing an item to consider a sales tax increase at that meeting.
So I was just looking it up now.
Are they
Because
moving
I
forward with a
came
sales
over here
tax?
before they finished their,
Did the county recommend a sales tax increase?
Amy knows.
they were talking about
I
it.
think Melissa
but I-
knows.
Oh.
The County Board of Supervisors passed to put a tax measure on the ballot in November. 40%, it was a 1% sales tax increase, 1%.
Oh, they were talking half and I that.
40% going to law enforcement, 40% going to fire, and 20% going to public works.
Okay, so they need
Thank you.
a 66%
Yes.
pass
Yes.
it, to pass it as,
I believe so.
yeah,
Yes.
okay.
So that would make
It's a
sense.
That's-
specific, it's
That
like
would make
Measure
them
I.
Right,
8.25.
and that's a heavy lift for the county.
Yeah.
That's,
So that'll be the item that we bring forward for discussion as well in terms of, you know, our first step towards revenue enhancement.
Councilwoman Such, it looked like you wanted to say something
Well,
further.
You know, I'm economic development. I always feel like we're chasing things and there's not a lot of return on investment that I've seen with that. So I actually think we should call it something else because I don't know.
You may just kind of target the effort instead of the broad brush.
I just, you know, I haven't seen a lot of successful economic development,
Well,
city or county. So, I mean, it feels like there should be, but I haven't seen it pan out. I think a lot
So-
of money is spent. A lot more money is always spent than the advantage. So that's not high on my list. I mean, good economic development would be, but I just don't see it. I don't see it pan out.
I am of the opinion that our city administrator has some different directions that might be more useful than what we have traditionally looked at. But it's probably premature to speak of them right now.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of
I trust you.
optimistic from our discussions, but that's,
I don't know. I think
it's hard.
complicated.
And the tools that we have at our disposal are really kind of crummy for motivating the private sector. And that's what it comes down to, that or else tax possibilities. And
Well, I'm hopeful that the SURF funding, the 40 million or up to 60 million grants that the 7 county region could possibly get would be, would go into economic development. And what do they call them? High road jobs, that kind of thing. So, I mean, there are other opportunities out there beyond Sonora doing it, doing its rinky-dink thing. So that is, I think, a real hope for the future. What is it?
So-
Community Economic Resiliency Fund, is that what it is?
Yes. So Anne is, and I'll try my best to summarize, but Anne's absolutely right on the economic development front. It's definitely moving more away from local investment and a regional program. And it's the Sierra Business Council that is applying on behalf of 6 rural counties. And they have a potential at $5 million allocated to them to establish the infrastructure necessary to carry a $40 million 5-year economic development plan and program, $40 million worth of investments in the 6 rural communities over that period of time, I believe is absolutely substantial. I don't remember off the top of my head the schedule moving forward, but they are just in the place where the application, I believe, is due just before the end of June. And then I'm not quite sure how soon resources begin to become allocated, but they would then be working through the jurisdictions, hopefully, and with the districts to identify projects and priorities that would then compete for those funds. So definitely a substantial investment in small rural communities.
Yeah, and they're taking 12.5% off to manage it. That's pretty generous. So,
Well, that's the planning phase. I think they said they'd be like $1 million of those $5 million, because the rest of it is infrastructure they have to create, but they are taking their salaries out.
well, I mean, I would expect anybody to take a salary, but it's just, when I just divided the 5 by 40 and said, wow.
Well,
That's-
I mean, but that's not all SBC. I mean,
Okay.
they're going to, part of it is going to fund an employee at the Central Sierra Economic Development Council and motherlode job training or whatever, because that particular what's the word I'm looking for? That building and its infrastructure is, as he said, a terrific base for managing the operations, and it has all the capacity for hybrid meetings and all the other things that they're going to need, because it's actually 7 counties that are involved and 3 cities.
I'm glad you're
Sonora
here
being
to
one of
explain
them.
this.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's it's a big deal, and hopefully in the next 4 or 5 years it will come to fruition, and Sonora will be able to benefit from it.
That would sure be nice. So I wanted to make some comments too and ask some questions, but in general, I believe with Jim, I'm in concordance with Jim's statement about the economic development and the fee study, but I want to ask some questions about the roof repairs, because those are pretty critical, and the longer we wait, the more expensive they're going to be. So do we have any good estimates, or even good vague estimates, about the advisability of putting them off for a year, what that's going to change as far as their cost and that type of thing? Because I'd be kind of inclined to get it out of the way as soon as possible. It seems that with inflation the way it is and prices going up across the board for everything, we might want to consider dipping into our funds a little deeper now instead of putting it off another year or 2.
Yes, I think that's a great question. I can tell you what I know about the issues and things that I'm concerned about and why, but then I would turn it over to the department heads to talk more about the severity, and then Chris to talk a little bit about how he feels about the estimates. But I think in conversations with our fire chief on the roof replacement, I think that becomes an issue for me of our employee safety. That's a pretty costly repair. But from what I understand, that when we do have rain, our firefighters go out and place buckets so not to slip if they have to respond to a call. So that for me elevates it in terms of concern. However, I've heard that the damage and the need to the fire museum, combined with the water issues that occur to it, are much more severe than to the fire department from from what I understand. Though that building is not a priority from a human resource perspective and a risk management perspective. But from what I understand, it seems to be taking on a considerable amount of damage. Public Works, and that is the most affordable repair. And then that being a repair that we have received complaints, employee complaints about the deterioration of that roof. So I think if I could have any of the department heads talk about how you're feeling about the facilities, the maintenance, or your priority of that. And then Chris, if you have anything that you want to say about your feelings about the estimate.
Well, I can just speak quickly to the estimates. They're all post or pre the inflationary pressures that we've seen and would all need to go out for additional quotes. And yes, building materials have gone off the charts as far as pricing.
So Amy, Chief Neal, if you
Yeah,
could talk
if you
maybe
could-
about, because you have two of the roofs and the drainage issues that need to be replaced. So from a priority perspective, if you had to communicate need, which one would you prioritize?
I would say that we have spent money in the last 2 to 3 years on repairing the fire department, the station roofing. It has found probably 75% of the leaks, but there's still 25% that they haven't found. So it's chasing that drip to find out exactly where it's coming from. The last estimate that we had come out for the repair said that part of the installation was done incorrectly initially, and so it's not allowing the water to drain the way it's supposed to drain. And that's when they recommended replacing the roof as a whole. Our firefighters do either put down towels or buckets in areas when they're coming out at 3 o'clock in the morning. They don't want to slip through a puddle and injure themselves. So they do that as well. And I would say from a liability standpoint and safety of employees, that would be my biggest priority. The fire museum, however, has a worse leak, and Public Works, bless their hearts, they come out every year numerous times to try to find the leaks, try to patch the holes. They get it done for a little bit, and then it just starts leaking again. I think it was 2 years ago, the major rain and flooding that we had. It's not just the roof, but there's actual drainage issues on the backside of the station. It doesn't slope away from the building, so it came all inside of the fire museum and buckled the entire floors, and they were uneven, had a trip hazard. Our historical volunteers took the floor out with permission of the city and basically put an overlay, an epoxy overlay on the concrete. It looked really good. They did a nice job. They fixed the sheetrock where it was wet, patched the holes, painted it. So it's presentable, and again, they moved the historical equipment in places so that where the leaks are, it's not going to damage the history that's stationed at the museum. I think it was a cheaper fix there was 2 quotes I initially had gotten for the fire museum. One was around $7,000 to $8,000 to patch the holes and retar the roof. And then the other, I believe, was about $25,000 or $27,000 to replace the roof. That's probably 3 times the amount by now. So it has, and even if you can get some of the supplies, because everything is on back order. But my priority would be public safety, the safety of our employees first, and next would be the museum, even though it has a much worse leak. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That building has leaked for years. Talking about the museum.
Right.
It's the roof is a flat roof, and so there's issues with that. I remember when we had the ad hoc committee, we were kind of hoping to get more of a rebuild of the
Something with a
pitched
peak
roof,
on
and
it.
probably
Yeah.
should have been able to do that then, but that didn't happen. But there's also, like Amy said, that there's water that comes in from the backside, underneath the retaining wall, underneath the cement that comes up. And we've had issues.
Yeah. That's a lot more than a roof, obviously.
Yeah.
And I actually have, my garage
So that's
has
kind of
had
twofold in that.
the cement underneath it buckled up from pressure that was unrelieved, and so But
So I was just talking with Chris because I have not seen the need, I haven't seen the roof leak at Public Works. So Rochelle, if you are comfortable letting us know what's going on out there, that would be great. But Chris says that it has been a chronic problem for that department.
mm,
At Public Works, it's not the whole roof, it's just a portion of the roof, but there has been leaks back where the mechanic's office is. We had some, they had us do a mold analysis because there was some mold, but it was not black mold. It was a mold that you find more out in the atmosphere, but came in through the water. And it's probably not as drastic as what's going on across the street with all the issues that have happened in that building. But, you know, it's a long-term, you have more staff out there. We did have mold out there. It wasn't the kind that you had to eradicate and have people come in white suits. But we did have it cleaned up and done. But there is some, definitely, it's probably one of the least expensive fixes of any of the roofs. But it's probably 3-4 times what it was. I think it was what, 20,000. So it's probably,
shows 35 here.
yeah, or 35 or, yeah, it'll be probably 70 anymore. I mean, it's building costs are ridiculous.
Mm.
So with that, perhaps what we can do is approve the budget with staff's recommendations and then get updated cost estimates. It sounds like the fire station roof and the Public Works roof needs to be the priority considerations. And so we can do that with that in mind.
So that would be the approach that I would most support, because I think that where we have people working there, we really need to be looking at mitigating it while it's still
Well,
affordable.
and it's a long-term investment.
Yeah. So,
We
and
would
it
be
will
happy to do that.
probably be more expensive in the future. Even if we do go into recession, I don't imagine much is going to get very much cheaper. But I'm looking at you, Chris, because you know more about the economy probably.
Yeah.
If it,
Because a recession seems like you, as you said, likelier and likelier. It's only going to have to go in 1/10 below the zero that's predicted, and we're officially in a recession. But while that will hurt investing in a lot of other things, it probably isn't going to temper people's costs and requisite yeah, wage requirements. So,
Yeah, but we are very susceptible to decreases in sales tax,
mm,
and a recession would,
Yeah.
you know, just cause people to spend less money because
Right.
they have less money.
it hurts the city, but I mean,
Yeah.
our costs for having work done will probably not go down by any
No,
measurable amount.
That is true.
Okay, and that's what I was getting more towards. So,
So that is all we have. And again, thank you. We just appreciate this time. I think it means a lot for staff to stand before you and be able to communicate some of the challenges that they face. And I think by this list, we can see that there are a lot of basic needs that are affecting the day-to-day operations of the city. And we hope that eventually we can plan through this and then get to the higher level organizational and policy level issues. But your support of these items and your consideration of investments in the roof and some of the basics, I know it means a lot to the team and to the boots on the ground who are doing the jobs every day. So thank you for that.
and now we go on to item C then?
So,
Are you covering that?
No, I'm gonna let the boss
Yeah,
over here,
yeah,
the finance
Steve-Bob,
guru,
okay.
cover.
Yeah, so item C is just it's a extended contract for the visit to Tuolumne County through December. And it puts us on the same timeline as the county. And at that time, they want to look at the contract as far as a more long-term contract. And so we just want to be on the same calendar as the county for these contracts.
Oh, sorry,
So-
Chris, I thought that was the GAN limit one. I could have done that one.
That's next.
Well,
So are we supposed to pass all three at the same time, or are we supposed to pass them individually, or what?
I think that we could probably do it either way, but first I'll call for public comment. If you have no further questions of staff,
No.
nope, okay.
And I know BC has raised her hand.
So, BZ, we look forward to hearing your public comment. Hopefully the electronics will be working better.
I hope so too. I apologize for earlier. That was a glitch at my end. You know, I've been listening to this and, you know, my public comment is essentially, it's very difficult to hear that we are in a really rough place financially and that there need to be ways to increase revenue and or ways to sort of redirect some of the costs. And one idea came to me, and it's just one little teeny tiny idea, but I'm going to toss it out to you. The cemetery, as I understand from what Chris said, there are no more plots for sale in the cemetery. Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct. We do purchase some back when they go unused, from families and resell
right.
those, but there are no more plots.
Okay. And can you just refresh me? What's the annual cost of maintaining the cemetery? Ballpark?
It's between 35 and 45,000
Okay.
in
Well,
that range.
thank you. So here's this crazy idea. My parents are buried in two places. One is in a cemetery in Oklahoma and the other is in a cemetery in Texas. There's more to that story, but not tonight. And those cemeteries have cemetery associations where the family members and the owners of the plots are encouraged to make annual donations. Is there anything of that effort being done right now with Mountain Shadow?
There's not. We've discussed internally on what the best course forward would be to try to raise some from regular funding for that, but we haven't done much with that yet.
Well, I know in my situation, just as an example, we look at that as a family responsibility to keep those two cemeteries up to standard and in good care as part of our memorial for our parents. And I would imagine that there are many people who have ancestors that are buried there who might be willing to make contributions if there was some sort of a cemetery association that could be established that would then help offset the cost to the city. I know that between my brother and I, we probably donate approximately $500 a year to the two cemeteries so that we can just sort of know that mom and dad are okay and they're getting dusted and all that kind of stuff. So I just put that out as an idea because I know it's done in communities all over the United States, and it might be something that you guys might like to explore to offset a substantial cost. So thank you.
Thank you very much, BZ. Not seeing any further public comment. I'll close public comment, bring it back to the council.
So you're looking for a motion then?
Yes.
Okay.
please.
Well, so I'm going to make two motions. One's for the budget and one's for the contract extension. So I'm going to move to approve the fiscal year 22-23 proposed operating and capital improvements budgets as presented, and also approve the supplemental budget requests that were delineated in the presentation.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, signify with a no. Passes unanimously.
Okay. And then the second one, I did it this way just to make it clear, separate the budget from the contract. So move to authorize the contract extension between the city of Sonora and Visit Tuolumne County.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. opposed signify with a no. Passes unanimously.
May I
Thank-
clarify, just, we do have direction for the roofs to evaluate the estimates and bring that item back for council consideration? Direction
Did you need
given?
that as part of
Yes.
the motion?
You don't, I just need
Okay.
confirmation and direction
Direction,
given.
Yeah.
direction,
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Roofs are
Consensus or
important.
whatever you, yeah.
Thanks everyone for being pro-roof.
Be pro roof.
Pro roof and.
Yay,
yeah.
the next
So,
one's the
I need-
GAN
I-
limit.
Need glasses to see again. So, coming to item number 8. Consider adoption of resolution number 06-06-2022-B, establishing the GAN appropriations limit for financial year 22-23 for the city of Sonora. Chris Gorski, our Administrative Services Director, please.
So each year, the city passes the GAN appropriations limit, which limits the amount of funding we can spend each year in our budget, and our budget is certainly much below these limits. It's based on a couple of factors, including the inflation rate in California. And for 21-22, that rate is 5.73%. And then we are able to choose between the city's population change versus the counties. And the rate was 0.91%, which is, in the last few years, it's actually declined. And so our total adjustment factor is 1.0669. And that was based on the prior funding limit, which was 47,844,771. And produces our 22-23 GAN appropriation limit at $51,045,586.
Gives us something to work toward.
So we'll probably be under that then.
We will be under that.
So probably no questions from the council. We've seen this annually.
You see this every year.
And do we have any public comment?
Wow, look at them all.
So, yes, well, even BZ, while I can see you,
Well-
BZ.
Oh, yeah, I'll give you one. Quick. This is mine, and you're not gonna like it, Mark. You ready?
So, hit me.
Raise my taxes. Raise my taxes. Taxes are to help us live in a civil society, to be able to keep our cities safe, to help people feel secure, to be able to rebuild infrastructure that is crumbling. And if we are in a situation where our infrastructure is at risk, where sidewalks are crumbling, and we have to worry about people, tourists and such, tripping and hurting themselves, then it's time that we find ways to increase the revenue. And if it means putting forth a tax increase, that is what people do when they live in a civil society. So go ahead, raise my taxes. I'll be okay.
Thank you, BZ. You know that donations are already welcome and would be much appreciated. So going forward.
I will look into that, Mark.
We'll bear that in mind, though. Thank you very much. Bringing it back to the council, seeing no further public comment. Any discussion or motions?
Oh, I thought we did the motion already.
No.
Oh, move to adopt resolution 06-06-2022-B, establishing the GAN appropriations limit for fiscal year 22-23 for the city of Sonora.
Go, Ann.
No. I mean,
I'll second
it's your
that.
last hurrah.
Yeah, that's a real
I
hurrah.
will call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? No. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to monthly reports. Do we have anything further from our department heads? Ms. Kellogg, anything further? Chief New, have you anything? Oh, yippee.
Yippee.
She's getting in extra steps.
Oh, we like to smile too.
Well, I won't be seeing probably any of you unless we run into each other on the streets or in City Hall or the fire department until after the 4th of July. So I want to wish everybody a safe 4th of July. Remind our community that fireworks are illegal, whether they're safe or sane. or of the illegal type out of state. All fireworks in Tuolumne County, including the city of Sonora, are illegal. So please, if you want to go to a fireworks show that's been approved, please go see the fireworks at those locations. But just a reminder that we are in fire season and to be safe out there. And I believe since it is your guys' last, well, before the transition of the new council members, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to work with you while you've been on the council. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief New. Chief Vanderweel, anything further? Thank you. Shall we start with our city administrator?
Nothing further, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Gorski.
I just would like to say a couple things. Producing this budget every year, I would like to thank the department heads. They always make it very easy to do budgets, and I've been doing this for a very long time, and you end up having to sort of corral some people to maintain budgets throughout the year, and these department heads are not like that, and they're very responsible with their budgets, and I would like to thank them for that.
Thank you to all of them. So I'm new at this. So City Clerk, did you have anything further to add? You're pretty special
No,
now.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. And our city attorney.
No, nothing to add.
Councilwoman Sagerstrom.
I just, you heard my little spiel about the SURF grant and the planning. Melissa and I met with Steve Frisch from the Sierra Business Council and got the initial spiel, which was long and complicated, and hopefully Melissa just internalized all of it. And we will be hearing from her throughout the process. I also went to listened to the Yes Partnership and their monthly meeting. There will be no meeting in July. I was on the Public Safety Committee with Jim, and we okayed the Big Brother license plate readers. And then we had the SURF listening session.
I like the characterization of them.
So.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Such.
Let's see, on the 8th I attended, forgot how to do this. On the 8th I attended TCTC. Can't remember anything come
Budget.
up.
We approved budgets.
Oh, we approved the budget, that's right.
For both the transit agency and
In the council.
council.
On the 9th, I was at Tuolumne County Commission on Homelessness. It was a pretty rough meeting. There were some members of the public there who spoke pretty disparaging of unsheltered people. But other than that, it was a pretty good meeting. ATCA Board of Directors meeting on the 10th, and not much to really say about that. On the 15th, I attended the Tuolumne County Stanislaus Irwin meeting, and just lots of good grants coming out of there. So whoever takes over that committee, hopefully there are some things that they can do for the city, maybe with drains, help businesses downtown. Vision Sonora, I would like to thank Melissa for resurrecting that committee. Lots of excitement moving forward in Vision Sonora. And I think, Melissa, thank you. You've brought a lot of energy to that group. And then on the 17th, I attended an outdoor shelter, a newly formatted outdoor shelter meeting about just how to, the county is moving forward with an outdoor shelter plan, but this was just how to build it, or what we want, what services we want, and just what needs to be there to make it a successful shelter. So that's
When you say outdoor shelter, you mean like tents or?
No, it would probably be pallet houses.
Okay.
Yeah, right, and it would be a supervised outdoor shelter.
Better than firefighters.
What?
Better than firefighters.
Better
sleeping
than-
on the dirt.
Oh, yeah, better than firefighters. Anyhow, that's it from me.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garaventa.
As Colette mentioned, and we mentioned, attended the Tuolumne County Transportation Council. And we had the budget review. And we did not have a solid waste committee meeting this regularly scheduled. I think there might be one between now and the end of the month, a special one. But I think that's mostly going to be regarding the county's contract with waste management. So it doesn't really affect what would happen to us in the city so much because they have a separate.
Right, they have a
Separate
separate contract,
Um,
but we're kind of modeled after them and
Yeah. And then, let's see, I think that's pretty much it. It's been an interesting 8 years. And this is probably the last time we get to say anything. So I want to thank all of you for, doing such a great job for the city and being great, colleagues and all that. And you never know what happens down the road. So I could
so you're just threatening a little bit.
just
in
threaten a
case.
little bit, stay in line or I might be back
Sir,
after you.
yes, sir. Well, we
But,
hope you'll be back.
Yeah, well,
The county
never
can
know.
use you.
well, we'll see.
You
Are-
can't leave us now. We still have work for you on July 5th.
Yes,
Well, yeah,
and do you anticipate leaving before the next meeting, or are you going to be around? Because,
I'm not sure. That could be on the phone.
okay, so it'll be
Um,
hard to lift a glass of champagne with you on the phone.
That's
Well,
right. Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, that still works, huh? Okay, well, thank you, and it's been a challenge and a joy to work with both of you. So I expect to at least see you, Colette, next meeting, and I hope that you'll be here, Jim, but if not,
Hopefully.
that'll be because you got better things to do. Anyway, so Melissa and I met with Darren Grossi and from TCTC to explore some different possibilities for both Greenlee Road extension and other ways to try and reduce downtown traffic. And so there are some challenges with that, especially the issue of decreasing the heavy truck traffic, which is what would make the most difference for the downtown in addition to decreasing and just regular traffic, which would be nice, but that particular route is probably not going to do a lot for our heavy loads, full-size semis and log trucks and that type of thing. So we are looking at that and alternatives and trying to press ahead so that we can improve the quality of life for downtown and pedestrians. Am I missing anything?
That was perfect.
Okay, Melissa is way better at this than I am, but I thought that was a meeting that would interest the council and have some bearing on where we go forward, both in public support or not. And so it was interesting and useful, and I am developing a lot of trust in Melissa's instincts and representation of the city. That was really nice to see, and she did a great job. I don't know nearly as much about these issues, and that was good anyway. And with nothing further to say, well, no, I would like to thank everyone who voted in our election. It is so important, and it guides the city and the county, nation, of course, but it was a good election, and we will be a different council soon. So thank you all. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at